Hi, Dustin. Hi, Matt.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Chet. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
How's your voice? Coming back at all?
Pretty strong in the morning, and by the end of the day, a lot weaker. So
So meetings are tough.
a little sometimes, but Michael helped me through. He'll do most of the talking. I'll save mine for the ADU discussion.
Yeah.
Who's leading this meeting?
Excuse me?
Oh, you, okay.
Who? I don't know who's talking.
Me, Lynn Solms. Right here.
Okay.
The meeting will be led by the Planning Commission Chair, Matt Kowalski, with assistance by Michelle Annual and myself.
Okay. Thanks.
Kind of getting about 7 o'clock. I'm trying to move around people on my screen to get our planning
Put yourself at the
commissioners.
top.
Yeah, well, and the planning commission is all in a group, so I can kind of see. Yeah, we're kind of spread over 2 pages. Okay, looks like we have a quorum. If you give me one more minute, I'm trying to move, but it's not working very well. Trying to move all planning commissioners. To one screen. Well, it looks like we do have our quorum, so I think with that, get started in a minute. Oh, okay. Okay. Looks like we have our quorum. So at this time, I think I would request that we call the meeting to orders. Ms. Carol Jones, please.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I got you.
Okay, roll call again. Tell us where you are attending and what in the city or where else and what. And we'll start with Matt Kowalski.
You're attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Tom Phillips.
Are also attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Jim Carty.
Present, attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Allison Heatley.
Attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Chet Hill.
Present, attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Kyle Marsh.
I have not seen him yet, Carol.
Okay, I did not either. Okay, I will watch for him. Karen Roberts.
Also attending from the city of Dexter.
Wah Hubbard.
Here, attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Dustin Wise.
Oh, hang on a second.
Present, attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Okay. And student reps Charlotte Hawley.
Charlotte and Aiden will be absent tonight.
Okay. And Eleanor King, student rep.
I believe Eleanor is here. Let me see if I've got her. Let me unmute her.
Present, attending remotely from the city of Dexter.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. Okay, first on the agenda, action on the minutes from the regular meeting from April 5th. If we could have somebody move the minutes, please.
So move.
Moved Roberts. Do we have a support? And I may need, again, just kind of a heads up. Unfortunately, we have a lot of faces on the screen, so I can't see hands necessarily. So I may need you guys to call it out. So is there a support?
Support.
Support. Okay, support Hill. Any changes to the minutes as posted? Seeing none? No hands up? Okay. All in favor of the wait, I'm sorry, Carol, we need a roll call.
That's correct. Okay, we'll
Sorry.
start with that. Carty.
Oh, he's muted.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Phillips.
Yes.
Marsh. Not yet. Heatley.
Here, she might be muted.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Wise.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes. Okay, minutes are approved as posted. Next, we have approval of the agenda. If we could have someone move the agenda, we do have a couple of amendments to the agenda. But if we could have somebody move the agenda as posted, and then there was a request, actually, we could put out, there was a request from the applicant for the Care 2 tier building to move that up in from move it up in front of old business, basically, to move it up in the agenda. That would be as item, so it would be right after item 8 on the agenda, right before item 9. So new business typically is right after old business. They had requested we move it up. So if somebody would like to make a motion to amend the agenda in that way. There is also an item that I wanted to add to the agenda, which was a discussion of site plan scheduling, basically, that would be good enough for now. Kind of a brief discussion with Planning Commission about when a project may be scheduled for Planning Commission action, and to help give staff a little bit of direction on that. So with those two amendments, and again, if somebody doesn't necessarily want to move one, wants to move the other, or we can put an amendment out there and I guess see where it goes. So if somebody could move the either amended agenda or an agenda, that would be great.
I'll move the agenda, but only adding your addition. I don't want to swap these two. Items.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So is there a second for that?
Support.
Okay. Support. I think that was Healy, but
Healy.
okay. Thank you. Okay, do we have any discussion on the agenda as amended? Again, so I had recommended to add an item for discussion under new business brief. There was another request, but so far the amendment just includes the one added agenda under new business. And I'm scrolling through our list of hands. I don't see other hands. If there's no other discussion items, let's see other hands raised. So I guess at this time, Carol, could we have a vote on the agenda as amended?
Yes. Hubbard,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Marsh, still absent. Phillips,
Yes.
Cardy,
Muted.
here.
okay, Kyle, we're voting on the agenda.
I'm gonna
I
vote,
heard.
I'm gonna vote yes, and I'd suggest that the host let us unmute ourselves. Like, I've got background noise, so I need to mute and unmute.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way I have to have the audience turned off, Jim, and I haven't been able to figure out how to turn off the audience and keep the Planning Commission on. So I'll have to unmute you each time. I'm sorry.
They're all nice Dexter people. I'm sure we can trust them not to.
Unfortunately. we
Okay,
need to.
continuing the roll call. Hill,
Yes.
Heatley,
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes. Okay, the agenda is amended. Moving on, for our public hearings, the first of two public hearings for tonight. The first public hearing would be the text amendment to the zoning ordinance to permit the self-storage within the industrial district. Okay, so at this time, I think Mike, Michelle, you had indicated, I believe Mike would be giving us a little background on this.
Mike is going to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so this is a repeat of a public hearing that was held at the Planning Commission's meeting last month to consider text amendments to the zoning ordinance to allow self-storage facilities as a special land use in the I-1 district. This text amendment was initiated by a request for determination for compatibility, the criteria of which are in section 307 of the zoning ordinance. That request was submitted by an applicant for a self-storage facility for property located at 7850 2nd Street. However, that applicant has since withdrawn their application for the special land use. So that specific consideration will no longer be considered. However, the text amendment is still under consideration by the Planning Commission. So the section 307 process is established to allow request to be submitted to the Planning Commission to review uses that are not currently permitted in any of the city's zoning districts for their compatibility with a specific district. Self-storage facilities are not currently permitted anywhere in the city, either as a special land use or permitted use, which is why the application for this review was submitted. The Planning Commission found that the use as proposed would be compatible with the I-1 industrial district. And so the next step in the process is to proceed with the text amendment to allow the use as a special land use, which is the purpose of the hearing tonight. The section 2306 of the zoning ordinance establishes the criteria for considering text amendments. So pursuant to those criteria, the Planning Commission has reviewed self-storage facilities according to section 307 and found it to be compatible with the I-1 industrial district. Staff and consultants also provided reviews of the use and recommended approval of the use as a special land use in I-1 with conditions listed in the packet. Those include limiting the hours of operation, prohibition against hazardous, limiting hours of operation for uses adjacent to residential districts, prohibiting storage of hazardous materials, as well as that all accessory uses for self-storage need to be contained within a building. The attorney review is also criteria that was not applicable in this case. And then lastly, compatibility with the master plan is a consideration. According to the master plan, parts of the industrial zone properties in the city are identified as research and development in the city's future land use map of the master plan, while the intent of research and development is to allow the continued operation of existing uses and allow for adaptive reuse of buildings for high-tech businesses. While not, the Planning Commission determined overall that while not allowing for high-tech uses, that this proposed use could be compatible with that intent. So that's the summary, and the action tonight would be to either move to approve the text amendment or recommend approval of the City Council, postpone or make recommendations with conditions or amendments, excuse me.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, do we have any, actually, why don't we launch the public hearing and then we'll have some discussion with commission after we have the public hearing. I see Kyle has his hand up, but I don't know if that's still just a residual hand or.
Hang on.
Yeah, that was from earlier.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, so with that, we will go into the, there was nothing else to add, correct, Mike, from the other consultants or anything else? Okay.
Nothing additional.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, we will open the public hearing. Again, this public hearing is to discuss the text amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow the self-storage within the I-1 zoning district. So at this time, yes.
Can you please direct the people to raise their hand and wait to be called on?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, very important. So I notice we do have some public on the line. So with that, if I will open the public hearing at 7:14, and just like Michelle said, please raise your hand and we will go down the list and we will call on you as in the order the hands are raised. Thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing at 7:14. Okay, so the first hand I see go up, Mr. McCarter, you have the floor. Please state your name and address.
Okay, I'm trying to find Mr. McCarger. Just a moment.
He's unmuted.
Okay.
That's okay, Michelle. I'm
you,
having trouble finding myself these days too. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share screen, please, because I don't want to hold you guys up. And Michelle, can you tell me whether or not you show a screen that says why now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So why now? What good or harm if we wait? First off, the justification that's in your meeting packet right now says, quote, triggered by the Planning Commission's determination that self-storage facilities are compatible within the I-1 limited industrial zoning district as a special land use. Respectfully, I'm going to say no. The actual trigger for the why now was a 12/29/20 letter from Kate Bond, who had Derek Warren as his client, pardon the typos, to the city of Dexter that said, quote, please accept this document on behalf of our client, Derek Warren, in consideration for self-storage as a special land use within the I-1 limited industrial zoning district as it pertains to the property located at 7850 2nd Street in Dexter. The use and the particular property coupled at the hip. Without the 12/29 letter, you wouldn't even have this on the agenda tonight. And I also note that there is language in the existing ordinance about mini warehouses, which of course gets edited out. As mentioned, Mr. Warren has withdrawn his application for the self-storage project. He voided the purchase agreement on the property on Thursday, April 29, near the end of the day. Some of us found out about that through email, others by word of mouth. Just to go back to section 307, a land use which is not cited by name as a permitted use in a zoning district may, and I emphasize may, be permitted upon determination by the planning commission that such use is clearly similar in nature and compatible with the listed or existed uses in the district. Staff has told me that an interested party can submit to section 307 petition. It's not what standing one needs to have to do this is not in section 307. I'm not sure of it. I didn't have time to research it. I note that the 12/29 applicant did not reference section 307 in their application. They did reference special use. I also note that Mr. Warren has, to my knowledge, now that he's backed out of the agreement, he has no ties to Dexter. He doesn't live here. I don't believe he owns any other property here. I don't think he has any vested interest in us at all. So I think there's an important question of whether or not he's an interested party. I'll come back to that in a little bit. Where is the light industrial zone now? Just as a reminder here, I hope you can see my cursor on the map. There are only 2 light industrial sections in the village right now. The one at issue, I'm pointing at Adair, and then there's the one that's over next to the and including sewage treatment plant, which is not on this map because I shrunk it down, but it's there. Current status along the 2nd Street corridor. This is a photo taken from the fire hydrant at the corner of my property. Notice in the foreground, please, multifamily residence. This is Dexter Flats. Reed and John Hollowell. Multifamily residences, improvements, that truck that's there, they are working on that place. They have done a great job of improving that and turning it from blight into an excellent multifamily destination. Just a side note here, where's Waldo? That is the future sidewalk. If you look at this picture and imagine to yourself, where would I want to put a sidewalk? Why not on the right-hand side? Well, part of the reason I think may be that Adair, which is the light industrial building, the blue one you see on the right-hand side, has significant nonconformities with its setbacks. And if you put the sidewalk at the edge of the right-of-way, you'd be shaking hands with a lot of people at the picnic table that is sometimes out there. Also notice, please, that there's some people walking over here because there's no sidewalk and the car is having to go down the middle of the street to make them feel safe. And there is a drainage ditch there. So personally, and Dan, I don't know if you're on the call, if I were doing this, OHM, I don't know if you're on the call either, I'd put it down the right-hand side and anticipate, hey, this may be a residential area. See also slides coming up. So let's go to the master plan, please. Quotes, aim to unify development of the city, strike a balance of orderly change in a deliberate and controlled manner, the basis upon which zoning and land use decisions are made. Here's the master plan, 2nd Street corridor. You will notice there is no I-1. Light industrial's gone. It still is out by the water treatment plant. There is a new light industrial, that's where the city facilities are on the other side of the railroad track, but it is gone from Second Street. Instead, what you have is R&D, including at Adair, that's the word that has site in front of it. You have multifamily residential, that is not manufacturing, and village commercial, which is it, both of which are expanded, public, which is the Horseshoe Park. Please see also the ordinance review process that is ongoing and the park planning processes that are ongoing, because you got a park here, and we have an ordinance review process which is ongoing and slated for spring 2022 completion and targeted bringing it to council. Master plan, Second Street area. What does it say about Second Street? This is the quote. In this area, R&D designation is intended to allow the continued operation of its current uses and facilitate adaptive reuse of existing buildings for high-tech businesses, less intensive than research uses, compatible with the adjacent neighborhood. The adjacent neighborhood is already largely residential, everything on the other side of Second Street, everything south of Adair on Second Street, and more so under the master plan. Self-storage is high tech? No. Job generator? No. Light industrial in the past? Yes. Adair is not coming back. I addressed that last time. Interested parties? Me. I can see the buildings in the L1 district from my living room. In fact, if I lean 2 feet to the left from where I'm sitting right now, I can see them. We're a few hundred feet away here. Others see the April meeting comments. There is a Second Street resident who is out of Zoom reach today who said to me specifically, I do not trust the city government to do the right thing here. Advocate for it. Text from another, will they take into consideration the comments from the last meeting? 7 is a tough time with bedtimes. I will pass tonight if previous comments are carried forward. So I petition the commission. I don't know whether it's under section 307 or not. If you need it in writing, I'll do it. I think the language is pretty broad enough that I could qualify here, certainly as easily as Mr. Warren can. Vote down the ordinance text amendments. Step back. Take some long, deep breaths. I like to do that every now and then. Take time now to take an authentic long-term view of this issue. See also the ground covered at the last meeting. Use the zoning ordinance review process to imagine the desirable no blight opportunities in areas like light industrial before you go ahead with the text amendment while you're in the middle of another process. So I have some additional slides.
Okay,
I'm not going to show you.
I'm sorry, I probably will. I think we'll need to stop because we're approaching a 10-minute mark here.
And I hit my last slide. The last thing I'm going to say is—
If it's super quick, yes. We did allow you an extra 5 minutes.
I believe this is moot. You guys don't need to act on this tonight. You do not need to act on this. The interested party is pulled back. You have a master plan. You have another process. Please just vote it down. If you can't find it in your heart to do that, table it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, we're still open for the public hearing. It looks like we have an additional hand up right now. It looks like Sherry McCarter, please. You may go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm Jim's wife, and yes, we can see Adair from where we live. Like Jim, I believe that the only reason this has come up is because of Derek Warren's request to put in a self-storage facility in the Adair building. And I think that as planners, I view planning as a proactive process. It's largely a proactive process. Certainly when you develop a master plan, that's very proactive. It seems to me like this moment in time is very reactive. you must, or feel that you must react to Derek Warren's request, and therefore the self-storage unit has to go somewhere, and because this is I-1 district, then therefore it must be the I-1 district. In my mind, because of the limited I-1 districts within Dexter, because Jim showed you that map, there's only 2 within the city right now. It seems kind of backwards to me to view this I-1 district as the place where a self-storage facility would go. R&D areas are much larger, much more vast, much more able to accommodate self-storage facilities. So why put this in the I-1 district? Why make I-1 the place for self-storage units? So it does not seem like, from my perspective, a wise choice to say, okay, I-1 district, that's the place where self-storage units will go. So like Jim, I'm asking that you step back and consider what makes sense in terms of where we could accommodate self-storage units, and the I-1 districts just seem very small and within the city, and self-storage units don't belong within the city downtown. That's what I meant, the downtown area. They seem like they belong outside of the downtown, if anywhere. So I'm asking that you consider this as a alternate option if self-storage units need to be accommodated within Dexter City. I think that that's all that I had to say. Thank you for this time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I see another hand up. I apologize, the name is kind of cut off. Is it Grunert? Yes. Thank you.
My name is Frank Groner, and I'm at 8077 Main Street, downtown Dexter. And I'm wearing 2 hats tonight. The first hat is as attorney for Adair Printing Company, which obviously is the title property owner of 7850 2nd Street. And I would submit that even though we're moving on from Mr. Warren as the purchaser in the past, the Adair family and all the cousins and nephews who have been interested parties in Dexter for the last 50 years. So they have asked me to convey their feeling that to continue to market this property at 7850, self-storage facilities, as discussed by the city's consultants, is compatible with the zoning, I-1 zoning district. As pointed out in the Carlisle Wortman report, this is a less, if it happens again, if we find another purchaser who wishes to put in a self-storage facility, it's a less intensive use. I've been in Dexter, goodness me, since 1982. And my office has been on Main Street for all that time. And those of us who've been around that long can recall my trucks from Adair that have come whipping around the corner at Grand Street onto Main Street. And that's not happening anymore. And if a self-storage facility is allowed, that's not going to happen either. It's going to be a customer-based use of the facility. So for the reasons given in the consultants' reports, OHM, Carlisle and Wortman, and the staff's recommendation that this be considered a text amendment, I would ask the Planning Commission to say so, yes. So the second hat I'm wearing is as a building owner. And it's also located at 8077 Main Street. And as I said, I've been here since 1982. And for those of you who have been here since 1982 or passed through downtown Dexter in 1982, you know, honestly, it was a dump. You know, property owners were longtime disinterested, out-of-town people, and they didn't care. They let everything just go. So since that time, and because of good Dexter people like you and your predecessors, we got together and we changed things. Now Dexter, the city of Dexter, is a jewel of what? Well, of Michigan. I wouldn't know about outside of Michigan because I can't go outside of Michigan these days, but I talk to people all over the Michigan, and when I tell them I'm from Dexter, they go, wow, what a great town. You have the bike lanes and the water and the Monument Park. So in 1982, the owner of this building gave me, a very young person, a chance to buy and restore the building. And I think I did a great job. And if somebody else comes along, when somebody comes along and wants to buy the Adair building, and I took the comments last hearing about eyesore buildings, old buildings, rundown buildings to heart. You know, to allow this property to be marketed even under the self-storage facility use is just another way to improve that building. Now, it'll take another buyer to come along and follow the rules and present a plan to everybody that's not only nice on the inside, but nice on the outside. And allowing a self-storage use will just add to the marketability of this property. So under both hats tonight, I would ask the Planning Commission to approve this text amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I see another hand that's gone up. Looks like last name Kissinger.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm a new property owner at 3558 Dover. I am opposed to this for a few different reasons. One, I'm concerned this is a spot zoning approach rather than looking at the bigger picture to make a decision based on this one applicant's proposed purpose. And as we've noted, he has withdrawn his purchase agreement. I'm also concerned that it's not aligned with the master plan. And this business as a self-storage is, in my mind, more of a retail business. I think one of the other speakers at the last meeting pointed that out, that it's much more similar to a store where customers are coming and going. There's only one or two employees. It's more like a retail business than research and development. I'm also concerned it will reduce access to the park, Horseshoe Park, and reduce pedestrian and biker access to the border-to-border trail. That's honestly one of the big selling points when we purchased the property, was the ability to get to the border-to-border trail and the walkability of the area. And I'm concerned that will decrease if a self-storage unit facility is allowed there. There's the potential for trucks with those big bays. You could have people bringing, say, moving vans to store their furnishings while they're waiting to move, which further increases the hazards for pedestrians and bikers, and also noise. So for those reasons, I respectfully request that this be denied.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker. It looks like, is it Stephanie Heinrath?
Hello. I'm not sure, are you seeing me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't
can
see
hear you.
myself here.
Yep.
Anyway, my name is Stephanie Minrath. I've lived in Dexter for almost 20 years. I live on the side of Cottonwood condominiums that is almost immediately adjacent to the Horseshoe Park and the Adair property. So, I'm very familiar with that area. And I agree with every speaker here on the points that have been made. Adair is gone now, and they may have been, a pillar of industry, employment, and many other things for the city. But now they're gone, and there is now the opportunity to actualize the vision that has even been laid out by you on the commission and the document that you created several years ago. I put many thoughts together in a letter that didn't get it included in the packet, but was added afterwards. So I won't say too much more, but I think that what you really see is that we have a residential area, and we have a growing residential area, and we have the opportunity to do something else. And so because this one gentleman came, decided he wanted to do this facility, and it resulted in all of this, well, now he is gone. And so I see no reason now to continue and to endorse this amendment, which really invites another storage facility to come to our city. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I would say we did receive your letter. It was forwarded to us. So we did receive it via email later in the afternoon. So with that, I'm looking for additional hands. I do not see any other additional hands up at this time. So I think with that, we will close the public hearing at 7:37. And okay, and again, with that, I don't know, I think we'll launch directly into commission discussion at this time, and we may have some additional follow-up questions for Michelle or Mike on this. But as the commissioners, we have our motion on our packet with our couple, again, there's a move to approve, deny, as well as a postponement. If I could find the proper page, I would read it.
11.
Page 11, yeah.
Thank you, as I found it, page 11. Okay, so with that, if we could have a commissioner make a motion, and we can have some discussion and follow up with staff. I see Mr. Marsh has his hand up.
Okay. So I would like to, so I talked about this last time. We're going through the zoning update, and this seems like the kind of thing that should be discussed in committee, not here. I think people bring up that the applicant has, it's no longer a question. And perhaps it does belong there, but perhaps it doesn't. But I think that this hurried manner in which we've approached it is not appropriate. So I would say that we should, so that it better aligns with the way that the zoning update is scheduled, we should postpone this discussion for 1 year from today. And so I make motion number 3. Based on the information presented by staff and the input received during public hearing conducted by Planning Commission, December 7th, 2020, Planning Commission moves to postpone the action zoning ordinance text amendment to, we'll say, December 7th, 2021.
Okay, there's a motion by Marsh. Is there support? Looking through my hands, if you commissioners can raise a hand, or
I think Karen wanted to raise her hand. Karen, I've unmuted you. You've got to unmute yourself. Karen, you have to unmute yourself.
all right, there we go. Okay, yes, Ms. Roberts, you are now unmuted.
I
Okay,
can't hear you, Karen. You got to turn up your volume.
I'll support.
okay, there we go. Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, so move Marsh, support Roberts, and the motion again on right now would be to postpone it until December, I believe it was 7th of this year, 2021. So we now open for discussion. Yes, Mr. Hill, and then Mr. Phillips,
Um,
and Ms. Roberts.
I've got a question and a couple of comments.
Sure.
Question is, what's the relevance of the December 7th date that's mentioned?
Yeah, so I just picked a year from the original application date of when this started. So, and that kind of just puts us, I guess it's kind of a tenuous space, but it puts us into where we're, working on the zoning update in the committee. And I believe it's coming out. Michelle, what's the due date for that document?
I don't have the schedule in front of me, Kyle, but we're scheduled to
It's-
work through this year and into a portion of next year.
Into a portion. So that gets us back in front of us, kind of the start of the year when I know things are slow for us anyway. So
Okay.
that was the thought
Yeah.
process.
All right. Yeah, tying it to that process is good. That's, but that's the reason I asked. But let me suggest a couple of things from my perspective. It's true that this whole question wouldn't have arisen without the applicants applying for approval for self-storage facility in the I-1 district. But having said that, conceptually, I don't have an issue with self-storage facilities as long as they're compatible in how they look. They don't have to look like garages like you see them everywhere else. They can be done so that they are so they don't conflict in regards to appearance. I'm not saying use, I'm saying appearance. So the idea that as I say, in general, I don't have a real big issue with it. A question was raised, why not the RD district as well? I agree with that also. In fact, those might be even a more appropriate location. I don't know, but I do think that many concerns can be properly addressed with proper planning. So the text amendment itself, as I agree with the postponing it, but as it sits right now, I don't really have that great an issue with it, other than the couple of things that I mentioned.
Thank you. I saw Tom Phillips had his hand up at
Yeah,
one point.
yeah, I did. I just
Okay.
took it down because I would forget.
Okay. So would you have something to add right now?
Sure. I think it's an interesting motion. I would ask that Commissioner Kyle Marsh consider removing the time constraint on it. I don't know that there's anything magic about 1 year or next week or 3 months from now. As far as I totally agree that it belong at this point with the applicant withdrawing, that it's an interesting idea to kick it over to the committee, who is ultimately going to report back to the planning commission. And it's his motion, so I'll leave that up to him. But I agree with a lot of what Chet said. I don't really have any problem with self-storage being in research and development or I-1, actually. I think the residents that have spoke bring up some valid points, and that it does make sense that the applicant made the request and that we're considering it, and all that sounds great. But I don't know that I-1 is actually the most practical use for self-storage when we have, the owners of the parcels in the industrial park have empty land there that may be well suited for that use. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think Jim Cardy was next, and then Karen Roberts. Jim?
Respectfully, I think Karen was ahead of me.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Karen, thank you, Jim. Karen Roberts, sorry about that, Karen.
Well, I have just one question. We decided that this was an appropriate use for this district. I've completely changed my mind, feel like I have thought about this as much as I should have at that time, but didn't. That's one just a kind of procedural thing. Can we say, I don't know how binding that vote was in, I guess it was December.
Right. Well, I don't know if staff wants it. It's not binding in a sense that, I mean, I think it gave staff some direction, but I mean, Michelle, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not and by the motion doesn't necessarily negate that previous motion if this goes through for postponement. But Michelle, can you please add a little bit to that?
So it's binding from the sense that you went through a specific spelled out process for considering a request for a use that's not in a district, which means if it's not in a district, it's a use that's not included in our zoning ordinance. And since we can't exclude uses, it gives, anytime a use is asked for, it gives you an opportunity to make that correction to the ordinance. You've gone through the process and made that determination. If Mr. Warren was still going through this process, your determination stands and is binding. Just because he has withdrawn his special use request does not mean your determination no longer holds water. For consistency, you don't want to be waffling. Postponing it can be allowed if you need more time to think about the text amendment. Perhaps it needs editing that you feel maybe we need some additional conditions or something like that. But from a procedural standpoint, and to Tom's question, if you're going to postpone, you do have to identify when you're postponing to. It can't be open. So I hope that answers all the questions.
Okay, well then, I guess I agree with that. But what I noted, thought about with this is there are only two places really, if we limit it to the I-1 district, and both of them are adjacent to residential, and that's been my objection to it, that it's erratic traffic. It needs significant lighting in order to be a secure facility, and and then the specifics of that site. They wanted to change the right of way, the city's right of way. I mean, there were so many problems with that site in particular. But when I look at where the possible sites are currently, it's just over near the water processing plant and there on 2nd Street. That's it. And both of those are adjacent to residential. And so I agree with the the public in terms of the R&D district, particular way ours is configured, is the place for that. So that's my comment. But I think postponing it is probably then the right thing to do.
Can I interject a few more points in addition to Michelle's comments, Matt?
I'd rather you wait until I talk, Kyle, because you may want to address mine as well.
Oh, okay.
That was Mike.
I thought that was Mike, actually.
It was.
Mike, I'd rather you wait till I talk.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So then Jim Cardy. Yeah, you can. And then I know Tom, but if you'd like to interject after that, absolutely, please.
So I'm going to vote no on this motion, and I'm going to tell you why. I think one of the things that we have to be most careful of, and that I'm most aware of as a lawyer, is acting arbitrary and capriciously. And setting this date is arbitrary and capricious. There is no reason to postpone this decision to that date. There's just no reason. We don't know when we're going to pick this up. We can't say when we're going to pick this up. It's facially black and white, arbitrary and capricious, and we get ourselves in trouble by doing it. It's also not fair to the owner. We should give the owner some direction. If this is something that we're going to allow, we should give the owner that direction tonight. If it's not something we're going to allow, we should give the owner that direction. I don't think anybody on this board needs more information after these two meetings. I think we're equipped to vote. I generally don't think it's an inappropriate use. I do think that we have a responsibility to take input from our citizens, and that input does influence my eventual vote. I have fears that if we vote this down, there could very easily be a project that comes along that is within the zoning that the residents dislike even more. But on this motion, I cannot vote no. And I urge you all not, I will vote no. And I urge you all to vote no, because this is classic arbitrary and capricious. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. And I think, was that Tom, did you hear your hand raised? And then Karen and then Dustin?
Oh, thank you. I didn't notice the order, but I have to disagree with Karen on this one. First of all, the traffic level's on the low side of any industrial use, so I don't think traffic should be a guiding principle with regard to this decision. And industrial, there's no difference in lighting from an industrial use. The only difference is that this site would be, regardless of who goes in there, if they change the use, they'll be updating the site. And so vehicle use and hours and all that, it should actually benefit the neighbors because it is on the low side. Another thing is, this use has been here for a long time, and I really value the mixed use in Dexter. I don't see that because it's been here for generations that should be viewed as a negative thing. If this was a park or a residential home and somebody wanted to build an industrial facility there and was asking for rezoning, then sure, we can talk about changes to the neighborhood. But this is not what's happening. All the neighbors, with all due respect, that live in this area moved here long after Adair was there and after this use was there. So we're not. I don't think it's fair to anybody to portray this as a negative impact on the neighborhood. It is what it is. But again, I as Chet said, I agree that this use is actually a good use for I-1 as well as research, and I would support that however we get there. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think Karen, you might have been next. I know Dustin hasn't spoken yet, but Karen, did you?
I'll be brief. Well, first of all, I said erratic traffic patterns, and that's because it's juxtaposed to a neighborhood that even it's slated to get new sidewalks, but it's not a very long sidewalk that they're going to be putting in. I don't necessarily agree that this is arbitrary. It's because we are going through this process of re-examining our ordinance through the lens of form-based code, and waiting till that's finished, or at least a little more in the, a little further along than it is. I don't think that's arbitrary. And so I disagree. Now, the difficulty is pinning the right date on it. And I completely sympathize with the owner that this just kind of hangs him up for not being able to market his building with that use. But this is kind of, as several of the residents have raised, this is a one chance that will not recur to take a look at this. So that's it. I'll take my hand down, or it's down.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, Dustin?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to say that I agree with Jim here. I don't think we should be postponing this amendment. I think we need to either put in to approve it or deny it, the number one choice. I also think that there's a lot of different uses that could go into that facility that would have a much higher impact to that neighborhood. And I think that sometimes we don't see what's in front of us. We see just what's in front of us. We're not looking into the future that what could actually happen. And I think in this scenario, I have no qualms with the storage facility in the I-1. So, and I do also think that it would be unfair to the owner to have it extended out for a whole year to just be out there. That's not good business, not good city business. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Wah, your hand is up.
Yes, thanks. I agree with Karen about it not being arbitrary, the date. I mean, we are going through the process with the zoning. And I do have concerns about the inconsistencies with the master plan and the fact that this is reactive and not proactive. And I just think this is an odd spot in town, and we have a chance to really have a meaningful discussion about I guess for me, it's okay. We have had these recommendations that this use is not inconsistent, and it's fine, but is it what's best? And so I think that we should be talking about what's the best use, not just what works. So I don't know. I guess that's it. Sorry.
Okay. No, thank you. Michelle.
So I think Mike wanted to make some comments.
Oh yeah, Mike,
So why
sorry.
don't Mike,
Sure.
Right.
Thanks. Just real quick for everyone's reference.
Yes.
As mentioned during the public hearing, both the Adair property and the property to the north are identified or planned to be research and development in the city's future land use map in the master plan. And so after the upcoming zoning ordinance update is complete, those properties could be considered for alternate zoning and may no longer be zoned I-1 after that process. Just as a point for additional consideration, the city does operate on long time horizons, but the future of at least those Second Street properties is not necessarily going to be I-1 zoning.
so just to piggyback off Mike's, if that's okay, Mike, and extrapolating that, there's been discussion about how the self-storage use could be in the R&D district as well. Excuse me, and waiting until the zoning ordinance is complete to deal with this. If you believe that the R&D district is also a district that the use should be in, you could recommend that the amendment include the R&D district as well as the I-1 district. The other thing, and not to pick on anyone specifically, but there isn't a district in this city that isn't going to impact a residential district. It just is the reality of the way this city is shaped and its limited boundaries. One of the things I think needs to be remembered is that through this process, you did the Section 307 review and came up with your determination. You've gone through a consideration for the text amendment. The applicant went forward to do the special use. And when he brought it forward, it didn't meet the muster for the special use. And you made it clear to that applicant what you expected in order to protect the residents and to ensure compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. That applicant ended up showing that your concerns were valid and has since withdrawn the application. But you're still in a process that you previously determined was appropriate for the R&D, for the industrial district, and that was the use. Again, not just the Adair site. Those are just some things for you to think about, as well as for the members of the audience who have spoken.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. That's really helpful background. So thank you. I appreciate you closing that up. Okay, so do we have oh, yes, Mr. Hill.
Let me, I don't know the process now. In other words, that particular motion has been raised. I respect Jim Cardy's views, long history of the Planning Commission and his knowledge. And it makes me think that maybe I agree in the sense that no new information is going to come forward, no matter what we do, at least as I see it, relative to making a decision on this. So maybe the thing to do is simply modify the motion to include the RD district and to include, in my mind, a statement, if it's not there, that one located adjacent to a residential district, that the character of the self-storage facility must be compatible with the character of the neighborhood or something along those lines. Anyway, like I said,
Exactly.
Respectfully, that's already in the special land use criteria.
Is it? Okay.
Well, the problem is that
either way, we're keeping it as a special land use in those. But one procedural question, Michelle, and then, sorry, I think Kyle, you had a point. But would we not have to re-advertise a public hearing if we were to add an RE district into the?
Yes, we would.
Yes. So, I mean, I guess that, well, I'm open. I guess we need to hear additional planning commission discussion to see whether or not that was an option. So the way I would understand it is, obviously we have a motion on the floor right now, which was a motion from, there was a motion to postpone to a date certain, which was December 7th. So we'll need to take care of that motion either way, or it could be withdrawn, I suppose. But then correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, we would have to probably just, wouldn't we have to deny or act on this motion, or I mean, sorry, this, this amendment to bring up, or the public hearing to bring up a new one, you know what I'm saying, with the RE added into it.
So if the, excuse me, if the postponement motion that Kyle made and Karen supported should fail, an alternative motion could be made with recommendations to send back for staff to amend and then come back for another public hearing. In a sense, that's like a postponement, but it's still an action with specific direction.
Okay. Okay, so Commissioner, thoughts on that? Again, me personally, sure. I think really I think the use can fit within that district. I don't have an issue with the use in that district, or really even in the RE district. But I think what the key always is are these special land uses. I think in some ways, and the acknowledgement to the adjacent neighborhood and things like that. And we always, again, and this has been mentioned several times, think in the back of my head, well, what else could go in there by right? What could move in there right tomorrow without our permission or anything else? And some of those could be much worse than a self-storage, and maybe much worse than what was there previously. But I think one of the key things to this is that special land use category, where we have the ability as a commission to really make that use fit into whether it's this building or not. I know we are really focused on this building because or the site, I should say, because this is where it came up. But again, we're looking at a larger issue of the industrial district, as well as possibly the RE district. But really the special land use is really what gives us the ability to put special protections in there for the adjacent neighbors, for the community. And that's what I like about it's not just necessarily a by right land use. And I think done correctly within the interior of the building. And again, what our issues were with this project was the exterior and some of the arrangement and the way things were either not being upgraded or were kind of being left in place. So, with our special land use, and as Michelle said, we verbalized those concerns, and I think they weren't willing to be met. So that process kind of took care of itself. But that is a good thing, I think, about that special land use where a self-storage would be considered. They could make it fit to the interior of the building. And we as a planning commission, ultimately as in a community, you have some feedback on this as well of how that's going to be tailored to look. So, but I see Commissioner Cardy now has his hand up, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that there is a little irony that we have this long-term planning process going on. And now on the fly, we're talking about dropping this into the R&D district. I mean, that part of it seems to me perfectly capable of being addressed by the process we already have going. I don't know why we would want to expand our discussion tonight or send staff out to bring the R&D into this. I think we need to, my feeling is we need to vote this up or down for the industrial district and give the owner some direction positively or negatively. And then if we feel we need to address storage facilities anywhere else in town and have a discussion about whether it's appropriate for R&D, which I have some questions about, that's a different discussion to be had in my book.
Okay, thank you. Megan, you have your hand up. Would you like to add to our conversation?
I just want to add two things. First of all, there are a number of things that have been brought up during this time, during the past two meetings that were not brought up when you initially looked at the use and whether it was appropriate in the I-1 based on someone's application. One was that the particular locations of the I-1 district, i.e. that there's only two locations and where those are. And I think planning commissioners have talked about that. So if anybody was, and then also that now in December, you did not have a zoning ordinance amendment process that was moving. It just started. And I believe that it started, I think, after your meeting. And so that wasn't on the table then. So those could be two changed circumstances where, again, if you're voting that up or that down, could come into play. And so wanted to, have that also talked about. And then the other thing is that there are other design considerations that can come into self-storage that are not necessarily the classic self-storage that we see with the small buildings and spread out. But there have been great ones where people actually drive through and the outside looks like a regular commercial building. So this doesn't, and as part of that zoning ordinance process, you could put design regulations in as part of it, or if you need more time to revisit it. However, as your planning consultant, I definitely do agree that with Mr. Cardy, that the date creates a very strange policy situation, also especially with the zoning ordinance process going on now. Because if in between this time, the subcommittee makes some determinations and is bringing an entire zoning ordinance package to you, probably in and around December or January of the next year, and this is not in it or is in it in a different way and whatnot, you've put yourself in a very strange policy position and you're in a weird window. And it creates uncertainty not only for the property owner, but for the neighbors as well. And then for you as decision makers, when something comes through on this, which we don't know whether, if and when there would be another application on the site. Thanks.
Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you, Megan. Okay, so we've got some Megan advice from here. So Michelle, we've got a lot of information. Oh, and we have, yes, Mr. Marsh, your hand's now up again.
Sure. So I figured I should chime back in since I made the motion. Yeah, you guys bring up good points. I mean, maybe the date, I wanted it to correspond with the zoning update, essentially. Because I honestly think there's more, I mean, people have hinted at it. There's more things that go into this. And I'm actually not even thinking about this project. I'm thinking as the use group as a whole. And is there a reason it was left out? I mean, the more we learn about these forms and form-based and other things, it's like, do we want to just, I mean, who knows? This is a brand new thing. And I feel like I would like to see more, I don't know. I feel like where we can talk about these contained storage buildings, but the way that this thing's written is you're opening it up to all the little sheds with all the lights on all night and the barbed wire fence. I mean, maybe that's caricature, but you're saying that's a cool thing to have in this district. And unless we can get some kind of thing that disallows that building type, that form, I still think it's an incomplete write-up. And then also, maybe it does belong in R&D as well. I mean, there's a lot more of that land. It's not adjacent to residential, you see, but who knows? Maybe that makes it in too. So to me, speaking of this use group in general, I think requires more of that type of discussion, which to me happens in committee. So that was the basis behind my postponement. I didn't see a motion to kick it specifically to the committee, but if that's an option, maybe that's a way to do it instead. And I would, at that point, rescind my motion, I suppose, or urge everyone to vote it down.
Well, I think that would probably happen if this were to be denied. I'm pretty sure it'd be taken up. We recommend that it be taken up by the commission to look for examining the future of this and possibly inclusion of the RE district as well. But I think as it stands now, I do agree. And Megan had a really great point about, I think, the nature of a postponement while this is going on in the background, the zonings and what kind of predicament that may or may not create. But we do still have that motion, Kyle. And so right now there is still a valid motion on the floor. And if you withdraw that, you could. I saw Commissioner Hubbard had her hand up, I think, but it may be, I think it's down now. Yes.
I'm good.
Okay. It's down. Okay. So we have a lot of good discussion here. We do have a motion to postpone. So we've heard a lot of discussion. If there's anything else, I mean, we may call a vote on this motion to trigger to see where we're going from here. So unless there's any other discussion, again, in the effort to try and move this along one way or another, I think I don't see other hands up now. So yeah, I think I'll yes, maybe call for a vote right now, unless any other commissioners have anything to add before. So right now the motion would be to postpone until December 7th. Any other thoughts? Okay, seeing no other hands up. Ms. Carol Jones, can we please have a vote?
Yes. Hill.
No.
Roberts.
Yes. Yes.
Heatley.
Hang on.
No.
Hubbard.
No.
Marsh.
Oh.
Wise.
No.
Phillips.
No.
Cardy.
No.
Kowalski.
No. Okay, so I think, so that wraps up that. So the motion did not carry, obviously. So we now have the floor back open. So if somebody would like to come up with another motion, we can further our discussion on that. Now I see a hand popped right up. Okay, Mr. Wise.
So I'm going to do number 1, pursuant to section 23.06 of the City of Dexter zoning ordinance, together with the information presented by staff and the input received during the public hearing conducted by the Planning Commission on April 5th, 2021. The Planning Commission recommends City Council approve AP 2020.21-14 self-storage facilities zoning ordinance text amendments as provided herein.
Okay, so move wise, do we have a support? I see hands up, Phillips. So move wise
Support.
Phillips, to approve the text amendment as written. So now back for open for some planning commission discussion on this motion. Tom, do you still have your hand up or no? Okay. Tom, do you have your hand up for discussion or no? Oh, it's down.
Oh, sure. I'll throw something. Yeah, I agree with this motion. I think it is a valid and a low impact use for the I-1 district, and I would also support it finding its way into the R&D district during the ordinance review process. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I apologize. I didn't see which way, if Hubbard or Hill, but Hubbard, you're on the top, so let's go with Commissioner Hubbard first.
Okay, thanks. So I hate to have to say this, but when we first voted on this, it was, I think, my first meeting, maybe my second meeting. And I think that everything that I have learned about this now, I'm having a really hard time with how closely tied this was to a particular application. And I don't think that this is the type of discussion that we would be having had that application not arisen. And so this just feels reactionary to me, and I can't support it.
Thanks. And Commissioner Hill?
I was thinking that the second motion, in other words, to approve subject to a couple of changes. And so my question is basically, our RDs does seem to want to be a part of this. But I take it that this is neither the time nor the place to simply throw that in there. Am I right or wrong?
We can't add it right now.
Pardon me?
We can't add it right now as a,
okay.
Yeah, you have to go back to a public hearing.
Okay. Which itself would set it back a month is what we're talking about. Next month, pick it up with that.
Or maybe more, depending on if staff needs additional time. I'm not sure. I'd look to Michelle for that, but I'd say at least a month.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Commissioner Roberts and then Commissioner Marsh. Oh, sorry, were you done? Yep, Chet? Okay, yeah.
Well, I guess I would say would agree. I think I agree with both Wah and Chet. I feel like we're kind of rushing into this, and it is controversial, and that we need to give it a little more thought. But that said, I think we could put some more planning commission discretion on evaluating that special land use. I'm having trouble picturing the form that Megan described, but that could be good. If you can, that might fit. There might be, again, thinking form-based, it's going to look much the same, but we'll have a different use. And so I'm going to vote no, because I think we're rushing to judgment on this. But maybe would like to look at number 2. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Marsh?
Yeah, and I'm with that too. I'm going to vote no because I still think it needs more look. I also agree with Wah in the sense that I can't shake the feeling that this is tied to this project, and somehow, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Like it's kind of just changing the rules for something to happen and kind of rushing through it. And I can't get behind that.
Okay, thank you. Up next, Commissioner Cardy.
Yeah, first I'll respond to the assertion this is changing the rules or in response to this one project. I mean, this is how things have always happened on the Planning Commission. We have a process by which the owners of property can come to us and ask us to consider changes such as designating something a special land use. That's how we work. That's being responsive to one of our constituencies, the owners of property in this town. This is not the first time it's happened. It's not the 10th time it's happened. I mean, this is a very common procedure. And Matt, you've been around here longer than me. You'll get your chance to talk. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But sure seems like something we've done a bunch of times before. I'm going to vote yes. And I'm going to vote yes only because it's a special land use. And I will tell the residents who have spoke the last 2 meetings that I have heard you, and a special land use gives us the discretion to make sure that any project that goes in there is a good project that is compatible with the neighborhood. And those of you who went to the last meeting heard me tell that applicant that there was no way his project passed muster, and there was no way I would have voted for it in its current form. And so this is not an all or nothing situation. You can win by influencing the views of the Planning Commission in terms of the projects that we allow. And that's what you've done for me. And I promise you that we will not approve any project there involving self-storage if this motion passes. That's not a great project. The other thing I'll say, and to echo on what Michelle said about the residential neighborhood, study after study shows that mixed use is what makes cities like ours thrive. And mixed use means you're always going to have non-residential uses in proximity to residential neighborhoods. This is a mixed use zone, black and white. And there are a lot worse projects that could go in there, I think, without needing our special approval. I encountered somebody in the neighborhood recently who asked me how we could possibly have approved the dollar store in Dexter. And I said, we didn't approve it. You know, it's an allowed use. And, you know, there are a lot of allowed uses people don't necessarily like. And that's a matter of personal taste. This would not be that. This would be a special land use. We would retain a lot of discretion. And that's why I'm going to vote for it. In addition to thinking that it is compatible with the district as we originally found. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardy. Okay, Commissioner Hubbard.
I guess, so as obviously the newest member of this commission, you know, I haven't been through this that many times. And so I don't know, I guess I have a different perspective because of that. And while I understand like this is the way things happen a lot of the time, I think this property in particular, because that is a road, because there is a park, I still, you know, I'm with, obviously I said this before and I'll say it again. I mean, I just because this is how we quote have always done this, does that mean that we can't look at this area a different way? And because this was so closely tied to an application, I still just think this is not the discussion we would be having if we wanted to sit back and have a discussion as a planning commission on the possibilities, the different possibilities for this property. I mean, the whole mixed use argument, I don't know. I think there's more to consider with this particular property. And I just don't want to restrict that discussion right now.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Cardy?
Yeah, I'll just say that discussions about what the best use of a property is or what the, you know, best use could be, that's much more a discussion for owners and developers. That's not a planning commission role. It's not a role that we should have. We're not supposed to push owners of property toward certain developments or away from others. You know, we're supposed to be a neutral body that sets rules and then people operate within those rules. And when you talk the way you just did about this particular property, to me, that's not what this question is about. This question is about, is this use compatible with this district, with the I-1 district? That's the question we have to be considering. And that's the question I'm considering that I think we've been charged with. And so I never want to be in a position where I look like I'm pushing owners to do something with their property. That's not my role. My role is to set the rules and then they live within those rules. That's how I view my role on the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Okay, additional, so we got some, lots of good commissioner feedback here. So I don't see any other hands up. Right now, we did have a motion to approve the text amendment as written. And I don't see any other hands up. So I think at this time, we might as well go forward and have the vote, and let's see where we go from there. We may need future discussion after this. But I thank the commissioners. This is really, I think this was a really good discussion. And I'll just say really quickly, I do support the amendment. And I think, again, really, and Mr. Cardy said it the best, I think really the key is a special land use for this, is that I don't think any one of us would allow land use that, you know, that has an undue impact. I mean, this special land use gives us this ability to really make this an amenity perhaps for the neighborhood rather than a drawback. So, and again, I'm not, I go back to the thing of thinking of this property as this, but it's not this property, it's a zoning district that we're looking at. Now, if we consider additional zoning districts, which we may, if this amendment, no matter what, the zoning process is ongoing, has been mentioned many times, it may open it up within that discussion. We may start looking at the other districts of where this may be included. So, but okay, I guess with that, again, I don't see any other hands up. So, Ms. Carol Jones, can we call the vote, please?
Okay. Phillips,
Yes.
Heatley,
Hang on.
Yes.
Roberts,
No.
Wise,
Yes.
Cardy,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Hubbard,
No.
Marsh,
No.
Kowalski.
Yes. So I believe with that count, that looks like that does pass.
I have
So-
6-3.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And thank you all for your input, commissioners, as well as the public. It's a great process, exactly how it was intended. I think to create a lot of lively discussion as well as public input.
Pat, can we
Yes.
let the audience know that this will go to city
Oh, yes.
council at their second meeting in
Thank you.
May?
Yeah, so the second, everybody heard that, I'll just repeat it again, second meeting of May for this consideration by council. And as I hope that most of the public knows that this is not, we are a recommending body on this. So council does have the final say for this. So please, interested neighbors, everybody else, you do have an opportunity for additional public comment at city council as well. Thank you. Okay, with that, the next item under the public hearings is the self-storage facility, but that was removed, canceled. So we're moving right along to the public hearing for item C, which is the capital improvements plan. Oh, with that, do we have a brief, Mike, would you be doing a brief presentation on this overview, or are we just going to maybe have what we know, but
This is a repeat of last month's public hearing to consider the capital improvements plan, which is a document that schedules and sets priorities for capital improvements over a 6-year time frame, including improvements to the city's transportation, utility, and facilities. No changes have been made since the commission reviewed this last month, and a template recommendation or a template recommendation resolution of adoption, excuse me, to recommend approval to city council accompanies the memo in your packet.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we will open the public hearing for the capital improvements plan. We will open the public hearing at 8:30. So if anybody would like to speak to the capital improvements plan, please raise your hand. And we have one speaker. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. Let me. Okay, yes, sir. You may, looks like Mr. McCarter.
Yeah, I'll be first out of the box again. No slideshow this time. I'm going to reiterate a couple of things I said at the last time because we seem to be now in the real public hearing that will be followed by the real decision making. There's incredible irony to me in voting up or down on this capital improvements budget, which includes a section on the park. And the language that's included in the capital improvements plan about that park and the decision you folks just made. The visionary documents, master plan, parks plan, the parks budget, capital improvements budget. I'm astounded. So as you consider this vote on the capital improvements plan, I guess I would say keep that in mind. And I also am chafing under the requirement that you guys act immediately after the public hearing on this, because obviously there's no opportunity for us to come back. And there were so many comments in that last discussion. And I know you guys are patting yourself on the back and a great conversation, but there were so many comments in that discussion that just astound me. Playing the long-term resident card. I'm coming up on 30 years in this town, in the same house. Interested party, Dexter teacher, school first responder, kids through the system, long-term resident. And for a brief period of time, I was on the planning commission. And I quit precisely because of some of the things that were done, the procedures that were done, that were astounding and incredibly poor, if not illegal. So to say things like, this is the way things have always been done, be careful about the word always. And yes, if I sound testy, I'm testy. If you're going to listen to public hearing comments and say that they're part of your decision-making, that they were incorporated in your decision-making, and then essentially blow away the lion's share of the public comments, take them into account now, because that's arbitrary and capricious. See you at the council.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? This is the capital improvements plan public hearing. Let's see. Any other hands raised at this time? So we will close the public hearing at 8:34. Okay, so with that, we move into commission discussion. So we do have a motion, again, a sample motion. So if somebody would like to make a motion, we can have an additional discussion. Any questions for staff? And the raise the hand would be great, because I did figure out that raising the hand does elevate you to the top of my little screen windows here. So it does help. Motion, anyone? Approve the capital improvements plan?
Does anybody know where the sample motions are? I can't find
It's at the bottom of the page.
Not on page,
Page 15.
15. Okay.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Hill, I believe you have your hand up, so.
You have to unmute yourself, Chet.
Rats, how'd that happen? I had the same problem. I'm sorting through these to find the motions, but I
Page
will make
15 at the
motion.
bottom.
Yeah, look, and I got my packet gets all messed up during the meeting. 'Cause I'm sorting
I hear you.
Anyway.
I'll
I
tell
will
you
make
that
the
it
motion
says,
to approve. When,
I'm sorry.
I will make that motion to approve. Once I find it, I'll give you the language.
I'll support.
You would
Okay,
be
that
making
was-
a motion to approve the 21 through 2016 CIP resolution of adoption and recommend approval of the 2021-2026 CIP to City Council.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
So that was moved Hill, and I believe.
I'll
it was-
support.
Is that Roberts?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moved Hill, support Roberts. This is to approve the capital, to approve the capital improvements plan as published. Any commission discussion?
Actually, I have a, whoops.
Oh, I can see all of my, okay, Commissioner Roberts. Yes, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of questions. The 5.02 is the master plan update, and we're done, right, with that? So can't we take that off the,
I think it's left in to note the 5-year updates that are needed.
okay, all right,
Because it's kind of a continual up, we look to update it at periodic spots or periodic time periods.
okay. 2.03, it's the trail, and it's showing phase 2 as future. It used to look that way to me, and I thought, well, that's done.
Is
Right?
that the Grandview Commons?
No, that's the next question. Did they put that in? Because I don't know, but that
So
was,
Not yet.
The
okay.
orange portion is what was just completed that goes out to Baker
Right.
Road. The purple portion is what's proposed for the next phase to go down toward Shield Road.
All right, okay, okay, oh, that's, okay, got it. And then the only other thing is, well, I don't know, this might just be gossip, but I went to the Dexter Forum on Saturday and asked Paul Cousins about the City Hall decision. This is 4.02, the Broad Street, whether that was a done deal, and he said no, it's not.
It's
So,
not
That
a
is,
done deal.
that is correct. The city's entered into a purchase agreement for the property, but that's the extent of it.
okay, okay, I don't know whether the way that was worded made it sound like, that it was gonna happen. So, okay, well, those are my questions, points, whatever.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, Commissioner Wise.
So this question is for, I think it's going to be for Mike for this one. Mike, when it said you put in the memorandum that the planning commission, like we voted to have that trail taken out of the 2.01 project, and then the Parks and Recreation Commission maintains the initial recommendation to include the trail to the connection. So it's up to City Council now on whether or not that will stay in that project, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions, comments, compliments on the CIP? It's better every year. All right. With that, seeing no other hands, Ms. Carol Jones, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay, Marsh,
I'm unmuting him, sorry.
okay,
Kyle, there you go.
Hello. Sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Cardy,
Yeah, he's waving. It was yes. Yes.
Roberts,
Yes,
Hubbard,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Capital improvements plan is approved by the Planning Commission. Moving right along. Item 5 is pre-arranged citizen participation. We have no pre-arranged citizen participation tonight. Item 6 is non-arranged participation. This is a chance for anybody in our audience to speak on to the Planning Commission for 5 minutes. So with that, we would open it up for non-arranged citizen participation. If you would like to say anything, you may raise your hand. We have a hand raised. Okay, yes, sir. We have one hand, Mr. McCarter.
You know, I promise this will be the last time. I'm not going to hang around at the end of the meeting and use the second period. I will note, however, that I had previously arranged to prearrange participation, and things went goofy on that. And there's some problems with that in relation to the timing when there are changes in agenda items. I really encourage this group to step back now and consider the ordinance revision process as an opportunity to take a big planner view. I worked as a strategic planner. My father was a strategic planner. Your own master plan says that you are to strike a balance of orderly change in a deliberate and controlled manner. So let's be deliberative, and controlled. You have important decisions and time to do it. And they're going to affect this village, this city, for decades. You just made a decision tonight, which could well. And as you know, I'm not happy with it. So take a step back. Think about the resident comments about the possibilities here. Think about the conversations that were triggered, including ones with the city council people about what do we really want to have happen in the city. That includes, but is not limited to, the 2nd Street corridor. So when these questions come up and staff is considering them, there's more to the word owner than the owner of the property that's coming in through a purchase agreement with somebody outside the city who has no interest in the city. There's more to the word owner. I'm an owner. Every single person on this commission, imagine tonight when you go to bed, you got a self-storage facility across the street. Now I'm using the fear factor there. I heard it used by several other people earlier, so I'm giving it a shot. Give that imagery a try. And think about, what are we doing with light industrial in the city? What are we doing with blight? How can we keep us on a trend that emphasizes those things that were said in the beginning about being a place that people are saying, wow, you got a wonderful place. Think about the B2B trail and the parks and yada. Yes, absolutely. When I moved here, my kids would have been going 3 blocks up the street to Copeland. Think about what's changed. So yeah, I'm in on that. I'm not a newbie. And I got my roots here and I have no intention of leaving. By the way, the Adaires have left. They're gone. We moved out, company and people, out of the village. It's past. We're about the future now. That's what planning is.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak to the Planning Commission? Please raise your hand. Don't see anybody else. Okay, so with that, we will move along to reports of officers. So chairman report. I did mention briefly that I did add an item to the discussion under new businesses regarding the site planning and scheduling items. So that is really something that that was just something that I wanted to share, and I'll give you some background behind that at that time. Other than that, that's all that I have to report. Is anything planning commissioners would like to share? If you want to raise your hand. I know that we did not have the zoning committee report. So with that, and yes, Commissioner Hill.
Simply that the ZBA met, but basically it was a simply to approve minutes from the previous meeting. some discussion on form-based code, but no real action on anything. There were no projects that we had to decide anything on.
Thank you. Anything from council? Ms. Hubbard, Commissioner Hubbard, or Councilmember Hubbard? Anything to report from council?
No.
Okay, all right. Community Development Office report. Michelle.
Okay, well, you've got my report in front of you. Do you have any questions before I give you verbal updates? Okay, it doesn't look like. So just real quick, as has been said already, the ZBA meeting on May 17th was canceled for lack of any cases. So the zoning ordinance subcommittee is going to meet that day. So we don't end up skipping a meeting. Their packet was drafted and sent to them for comment, and that'll get turned around, excuse me, for comment between them and staff and Megan, and they'll hold their meeting on the 17th. It's a public meeting, so feel free to attend. That's basically the only real update I have at this time. Like I said, if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for Michelle at this time? Don't see any. Okay, communications, we have none tonight. So move on to old business, item 9. The first item under old business, the text amendment to the accessory dwelling units. So we'll let staff give a brief presentation, I guess, some background on what's changed perhaps, and then we are looking to request a set a public hearing. It would be for the next meeting, June 7th. So with that, I guess staff, is this Michelle or Mike?
Okay, excuse me. So you've seen this now. It incorporates all of the comments that you have provided throughout this process. It's now in draft zoning ordinance form. So you have general provisions, which include the purpose and intent. It's a policy based on the statements and findings from the Housing Task Force, as well as your master plan. Excuse me. And it's specific to supporting the city's affordable housing goals, efficient use of housing stock and public infrastructure, providing housing that responds to changing family needs, smaller households, and the fact that there's increasing housing costs, meeting needs of residents, providing accessible housing for seniors and persons with disability, and enhancing residential neighborhoods. This is not being viewed as an amendment to create housing to support economic development tourism. You've got your short-term rentals, which you've already done for that. This is a very narrow focus attempt to increase housing stock in a way that provides affordability options for people in the city. It's got a solid definition that identifies what an ADU or an accessory dwelling is, provides some examples of common names that you've heard: accessory apartments, second units, garden apartments, mother-in-law suites, granny flats, and similar. Excuse me. They're separate spaces equipped with kitchens and bathroom facilities, and depending on their location relative to the primary dwelling, may be attached or detached. There are 3 categories of accessory dwelling units that are defined and that would be allowed if this ordinance passes. Attached, which has a definition and has graphic examples. You've got detached, again, a definition and graphic examples. And then interior, a definition and graphic examples. Are there any questions on any of the general provisions, the intent or the purpose? Intent and purpose or the definitions? If not, I'll go on. Your next section is the eligibility, permits, and application. Excuse me. Working to make sure that this dovetails properly with administrative review process. The eligibility is defined. We identify the zoning districts in which the ADU may be permitted and establish the owner occupancy requirement. So one dwelling unit shall be permitted on a parcel that has one single family dwelling as a principal permitted use in any zoning district that permits a single family dwelling on an individual lot as a principal permitted use, subject to administrative review and approval by the zoning administrator. With that said, accessory dwelling units would not be subject to the restrictions in sections 302B and C as, excuse me, that has to deal with the number of accessory lots, accessory units on a lot. And if we don't exclude those from being applicable, it would not allow accessory dwelling units. So we have to have that language. It requires a property owner to occupy either the accessory dwelling unit or the single family dwelling, except for temporary absences, not to exceed 6 months. And that an ADU may be created through new construction, conversion of an existing structure, addition to an existing structure, conversion of a qualifying existing house to an attached ADU, while simultaneously constructing a new dwelling unit. So we've covered all the bases for allowing this. And then permitted uses, establish the zoning compliance permit is required, how long the permit's valid, and establish a carrot and stick approach. That language is not part of the ordinance. That's a description for you. The language for the ordinance would be that no person shall create an accessory dwelling without first getting zoning compliance permit, and that all accessory dwellings shall be issued for a period not longer than 5 years and must be renewed at the end of that first term of issuance, and every such period thereafter. It also sets up that a permit for an accessory dwelling does not have to be renewed if during the time period of the last renewal or the first renewal, no complaints of violations have been have occurred, and the renewal of the permit requires an inspection of the dwelling unit by the zoning administrator. That's consistent with the inspection language that was approved for the short-term rentals, because it anticipates council approving a rental inspection ordinance. And then it sets out the application requirements, which again are tied to the administrative review and approval process. Excuse me. Let me take a drink of water real quick. Excuse me. It establishes that each applicant has to certify that the proposed dwelling unit included in the application is in compliance with the ordinance, and no permit will be issued unless the completed application form is accompanied by the payment for a fee that will be established by council. And then and this is one of the mechanisms you all wanted to make sure neighboring property owners were aware, within 10 business days of receiving an application, a completed application, the zoning administrator notifies by mail all property owners within 300 feet, describes the nature, identifies the property, and indicates where written comments can be submitted. And then are there any questions regarding that particular section? Okay, then you have your development oops, I see a question from Kyle. Hang on, Kyle, let me unmute you. Kyle, you're
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun a bit. So
okay.
actually, my next comment is just in C, so go ahead.
Okay, so under development regulations, and this is the area where you're going to see a lot of your previous comments for the tweaking of the draft language. So when it comes to the conversion of an existing accessory structure, an accessory dwelling unit that exists may be permitted in a, I'm sorry, an accessory dwelling unit may be permitted in a legally non-conforming accessory structure that was constructed before December 31st, 2021. That date is likely to change. That becomes the date of effectiveness of this. And since I don't know exactly when that is, the dates in there is a placeholder. And then this area is qualified if that existing accessory building is more than 200 square feet in gross floor area. It may be replaced and modified for use as an accessory dwelling unit, provided the new or modified accessory building conforms with all the standards and regulations of the ordinance. The conversion of an illegal non-conforming accessory structure that was constructed before this ordinance were to take effect, which is over 200 square feet in gross floor area, shall be replaced or modified to use as an accessory dwelling unit, provided the new or modified accessory structure complies with the ordinance. Excuse me. It prohibits the short-term rentals, which we've discussed before, because if we were to allow it, that really it cuts to the heart of what you're trying to do. Kyle, you have a question here?
Yeah, this was the item that I wanted to just bring up. So I don't know if this is the right time for that.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I mean, as somebody who's actually designed and watched people build a couple of these things, I can tell you every single one of them plan to rent it out for football Saturdays or, or something like that. I mean, these aren't cheap things to build. You're going to spend at least 150 grand probably to build this thing. And
so Kyle, there's a difference between building for an accessory dwelling unit and building an accessory structure to be rented out for a short-term rental. The short-term rental ordinance defines what somebody could build for. Two totally different.
But you can't build an ADU to do a short term out of?
No. It defeats the purpose by which the Planning Commission was establishing ADUs, which is to increase housing stock.
Well, a lot of people just want to rent them out for like the first couple of years and then they'll turn it into a full-time rental or something. I mean, who knows? But a lot of times that short-term rental income, which is great income, is an important part about making that, making those numbers work. So, I mean, to me, that just to outright prohibit it, I mean, maybe we work with the short-term section somehow, but just to get rid of it completely, that to me seems like you're never going to see any of these things built. In my opinion.
Any other comments on it, Kyle?
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Okay, I'll continue. Deed restriction. There's a requirement that a deed restriction run with the land on a form that would be provided by the city and recorded with the Washtenaw County Register of Deeds prior to occupancy. And it would have to incorporate restrictions that the accessory dwelling unit may not be sold from the principal dwelling unit to which it is an accessory. In other words, creating these small individual non-conforming lots. And the owner occupancy requirement in subsection B1C previously, where the owner has to occupy one or the other, either the principal or the ADU. And then the minimum lot area. This again is an area that that you all had some comments on the size of the units. The minimum lot area required for an ADU can't be, has to be at least 5,000. And that's because you really don't have any lots that are zoned residential currently that are less than 5,000. And then the table shows the square footage of the maximum size that an ADU can be based on the lot size. So 600 square feet for a lot area of 5,000 to 7,800 square feet. 700 square feet for lot areas 7,800 to but less than 12,000. And anything that's 12,000 or greater, the maximum would be 800 square feet. And then for setbacks, for an attached, those are going to have the same setbacks, obviously, as the principal unit that it's attached to. But for a detached, the detached ADU shall be 10 feet from the single family dwelling and other accessory dwelling structures. However, the setback may be reduced to 5 feet if the ADU is constructed with fire rated walls in accordance with the building code requirements. And then a detached ADU shall be at least 5 feet from any side or rear lot line and at least 50 feet from shoreline or 10 feet from the boundary of a regulated wetland. And that 5 feet setback, at least make sure that you've got a bit more of a setback and at least wide enough for a sidewalk to be put in if you needed to have access. Lot coverage, excuse me. Lot coverage is proportional to the size of lots. So maximum lot coverage for detached ADU in the R1A is 8% for the ADU and 33% for all structures. In the R1B and the village residential, it would be 10% for the ADU itself, but 40% for all structures. And the height for the attached ADU, it's not going to be, it's subject to the same requirements as the principal, but it won't be taller than the principal. And then for the detached, again, this is an area where you wanted specific changes, and at no such time shall the detached ADU exceed the height of the single family dwelling to which it's an accessory, or 30 feet, whichever is less. And then public utilities, all ADUs would have to be served by the municipal municipal water and municipal sanitary sewer. And then ADUs shall be connected to the water and wastewater utilities of the principal single family dwelling on the same lot and may not have separate services unless the superintendent of public services determines such to be infeasible. In other words, the superintendent of public services would have to be the one to determine whether or not connection to the principal structure services works or not. If it doesn't, then he would call it. And then the last section is design, and there are only some grammar cleanup items on that. ADUs would have to be designed to enhance a residential neighborhood in which it's located. ADUs shall comply with the single family design standards in section 304 of the ordinance, and the orientation of proposed ADUs shall, to the extent practical, maintain privacy of residents in adjoining dwellings as determined by physical characteristics surrounding the ADU, including screening, fencing, and window and door placement. Staff also completed a guide to ADUs to help people understand why the city's considering allowing ADUs and what to be concerned about. And then your next step, if you are comfortable with these regulations, would be to set your public hearing for June 7th.
Okay, was that, okay, great, we already have a hand up. I think you were done, correct, Michelle? You were done, correct? Yeah. All right, hey, I already see a hand up. Okay, Commissioner Wise.
Sorry, Michelle, in section B, eligibility permits and application. So 1B, where it says accessory dwelling units are not subject to restriction, in section 3.02B and C, is that a 1 after that, or should that not be there?
It's the footnote so that you can see the explanation at the bottom.
Perfect. That's all I wanted to. That's all I wanted to make sure about. And
Thanks,
then, if it's okay, can I do a motion to schedule a public hearing for this?
Yes.
For accessory dwelling units on June 7th at 2021 Planning Commission meeting?
Okay, do we have a support? Was that Kyle's hand up for support or a question?
Let me unmute him.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a question, so I'll do it after.
Okay, do we have support? So the motion was to set the public hearing for June 7th.
I'm sorry, did Kyle support it? I didn't hear.
No.
I don't think so, but a lot of hands just went up. So who wants to support?
Chet's hand was first.
Okay, Mr. Hill.
I'll support.
Okay, are you supporting then? Okay, so we have a motion, set public hearing now. I don't know if we have questions. So Ms. Heatley, oh, her hand went down. So I think that was all, but probably the second. Okay, so yes, we're on your question, Kyle.
Okay, so question on calculation of size. It lists maximum gross floor area. Can you tell us how that's determined? I know there's a bunch of different ways to measure it.
I'd have to go back to my notes. I know it's a proportional standard I used. 1 second.
I guess the big question was, when you have the one where you have a garage underneath and the apartment above, does the garage underneath count against your square footage?
Say that again. I've got to get a visual, please.
So if you go to like, it would be section A, number 2B, you've got a, I guess the graphic kind of shows maybe no. So you've got B, and then you've got garage conversion number 1, which is that upper part of the garage. You see what I mean? It's on.
Right.
So does that lower garage part, that's not part of the square footage then?
The lower part is not, no, it's the upper part that's
It's like the living
ADU.
space. Okay. That was all. It's like a 2-car garage is 600. So, okay, that was my question there.
Right. The handout is great, Michelle. I think the guide to ADUs, I think that will really, I mean, it seems to be pretty thorough. It covers a lot. And I think, so I mentioned this before, I think really education is key on this and getting public as much information and out there about what is capable with ADUs and why we are going forward with this amendment, as well as how it can enhance the village, the city itself. So that's really great. I mean, I think this is I've read through this a couple of times and I'm very familiar with a similar ordinance in Ann Arbor. So I think it's a cautious where it needs to be, I think, and considerate of adjacent land uses, but really it seems to allow hopefully where we do get some utilization of this in the city. So I'm very in support of this. Commissioner Phillips.
Hello, just real quickly, 2 things, a couple things. One, I don't know how we govern ownership in an ordinance. I don't think we can do that. That doesn't sound legal to me, or that maybe we should do that. We can certainly govern lot splits, lot sizes, things like that. But if I have a fixture in my backyard that I want to sell to somebody, that doesn't seem like it's the city's business. However, if I want to have a separate residence with a legal lot split, then I guess it goes to the whole issue of a condominium and the nature of that. So maybe I'm wrong in that area, but I guess I'd like to hear some thoughts about that. I guess I'm not positive. I guess there is a condominium element there. Potentially, we could do a condominium. But the whole issue of ownership within the ordinance, I guess, is a question I have then. And then Kyle mentioned that he doesn't think much is going to be built, or these would be built under some aspect of the ordinance. I just caught that. I guess I'd like to hear from, if you don't mind, Matt, I'd like to hear from Kyle what he meant by that. What concerns you about the ordinance,
Sure.
Kyle, that you don't think these are going to get built? Thank you.
Yeah, my one specific thing was that it's, we're not allowing short-term rental on these things. And I kind of get it. We don't really want people building one of these to just turn into a rental thing, but maybe their grandma is going to move in next year. And for the meantime, they just want to, help pay for this thing or generate some income. I mean, the ones of these that I've been involved in almost always had some component of, these are like Ann Arbor things, but everybody was hoping to help offset this pretty big chunk, this is like, what, 150 grand or more?
Kyle?
They were hoping to use some short-term rental to kind of close that financing gap.
So somebody can still rent them out. They just can't do it for a short term, but they could rent it out for long term,
Sure.
And that,
that brings up a good point. Are we micromanaging this thing at this stage? And again, since we're talking about a handful of sites in the whole city that could even accommodate this.
Well, there could be a few. I mean, I could see a situation where you like it to have it because, yes, your son comes back from college and he likes to stay there. And then you've got this and that other person coming for Thanksgiving. You want to kind of mostly keep it free, but, you do kind of want to help it pay for itself a little bit. So a short-term renter would, kind of be the perfect thing for that. And so just to kind of blanket say no on that, to me is, everything else about this is great. You really nailed it. But to me, that part, I don't know. Do we have to?
I think, Commissioner Cardy has his hand up.
Yeah, I think prohibiting short-term rentals is completely in line with how we came up with and envisioned this. This started because one of our residents was looking to be able to have their mom have an apartment on their property. And I think my vision of it, and maybe it's different from everyone else's, and if it is, please let me know. But my vision of it was, in part, we were trying to increase affordable housing options in Dexter. And we were, in part, trying to increase the diversity of housing. And that's what I envisioned, and that's why I've been in favor of it. Short-term rentals don't do that at all. And short-term rentals are not what I'm looking to encourage or grow here in Dexter.
Yeah, but sometimes it's part of somebody's plan just to do the short term for a while, or maybe they get, like when you're calculating whether to plunk this money down to build this thing, and you're taking one whole potential,
I understand. I understand that. I understand why it might be attractive.
Sure. I just
look. I don't want to have a debate, and I think that we don't have debates on the Planning Commission. Not the way we're structured.
We're not debating, but
I don't think we need to have a conversation, Kyle, and that's not the way we've traditionally operated. You can have your say after I have my say. To be more polite, please stop interrupting me. you know, I'm a landlord in this town. I rent a duplex in this town, and I have to make the consideration, and have made the consideration, you know, do I want to rent long-term or do I want to rent short-term? And there are pluses and minuses to both of those things. I recognize the economics of it. I recognize the plus and minus economics of it. But that's not really the debate I'm trying to have here. I'm trying to have more of a debate on why did we do this? When this came to us, it seemed to me that we did it to try and increase housing in our community, housing options in our community. And I never envisioned at any point that, you know, allowing these to be used for short-term rentals in football games would be part of that. And I certainly don't think that increases housing in our town.
Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, Commissioner Roberts. You're still muted.
Thank you.
There we go.
I think we spent a lot of time on the short-term rentals, discussing the pros and cons and what sorts of restrictions we wanted to put on them. And that's a separate category. And I really think it's just muddying the waters to try to add that at sort of the last minute. It kind of makes moot the whole discussion we had about what the nature of short-term rentals we wanted in the city.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cardy, is that your hand back up or was it not?
No, I'm sorry, not intended.
Okay, no, sorry. Okay, so some good discussion here, a couple items. I think to Commissioner Phillips' question, I know about kind of the ownership thing, and you know, I mean, we did go through that in Ann Arbor, whether or not, I think what you're referencing, kind of the was it the link to the owner occupancy requirement?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay.
General ownership of a property.
Yes.
And how that is done correctly. So there's lot splits, there's condominiums, and so there's separate ownership and there's condominiums. That's really the two sides. And whether if we're going to comment on that at all, who's going to own what where, that we do it correctly or not at all.
I think, no, that's a great point. And I think, because we struggled with this in Ann Arbor too, regarding that owner occupancy. I mean, as far as it did go up through our review of our legal muster there, and they did not for the owner occupancy. So, I mean, that did pass through there, but I mean, we could always refer it back through to Michelle just to run it by to make sure if there's any concerns legally. But I mean, I think I have seen that in other ordinances where in doing that research where owner occupancy is tied to that. But again, I'm not a lawyer, so I kind of go with how the others above me say it's okay. And it's been reviewed by the proper people. So, but Michelle, if you can add anything to that.
Now that you have set the public hearing, it will go through the attorney review so that you've got those comments at your meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So that can definitely, Tom, hopefully we can get your questions addressed satisfactorily with that too. So I guess with that, we haven't quite set the public hearing. We got to vote on it, but I think
you're right.
Well, assuming it passes. Other commissioner discussion. So again, and Commissioner Marsh has questioned some points as well, but this is not right now. We would be setting the public hearing. So again, there's additional feedback opportunities for the ordinance as well. Although again, we have discussed it quite a bit in the past. So, but we're not approving it tonight. We're only setting the public hearing. With that, oh, I see a hand just popped back up. Okay, yes, Mr. Cardy.
I just want to say for the record, I voted for the short-term rental ordinance. I'm in favor of short-term rentals. I just don't think that this is that.
Is that? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, with that, so we have a motion on the floor to set the public hearing for the June 7th, wait, was that the date? June 7th meeting? So not seeing any other hands raised right now. I'm missing something. I am not. Okay. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Roberts,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Cardy,
Yes.
Heatley,
Yes.
Marsh,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes. Okay, public hearing set. All right, moving on. Let's see, so the zoning ordinance update from the subcommittee, that's postponed. We'll be having that next month. New business. All right, it is the preliminary site plan review for the Care to Care office building. So there is a recommendation from our staff for postponement. But I think at this time, maybe we'll kind of give staff the opportunity to maybe highlight some of the issues, and then with that, we have the petitioner could possibly add something to that as well. So I'll turn it over to staff.
Matt, did you have an additional new business item to add?
Yes, we did add a new business item regarding the site plan scheduling. I assume that was added after.
Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna add that as item B if it was not specified earlier, but
Okay.
I figured we discuss the site plan first for the applicant and then we can discuss.
Okay, I think I misunderstood. All right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep.
that's
So
fine.
I would intend for that to go after this one, so we can have the applicant, any discussion we may need for them, and then they can go on their way or whatever, and then we can follow up with another discussion on the other item.
Okay.
With that, is staff gonna?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I can make some quick introductions, and then I'll turn it over to Carlisle Wortman and OHM.
Okay, yep.
But this is a preliminary site plan application for property located at 7390 Dexter Ann Arbor Road. We're joined by at least one of the property owners, Miss Radhika Bhagat, and they are represented by A.R. Brower Company, and with Miss Allison Bishop attending, and I believe they're the project architect and engineer, Mr. Andrew Walters and Mr. Robert Kerr also in attendance. So as I mentioned, I'll hand it off to Megan with Carlisle Wortman to start the review.
Thank you, Mike. So Megan, if you want to give us some of the highlights, I suppose.
Thanks. So in terms of highlights, it's a proposed multi-tenant building, but it also has an expansion, a future expansion that's proposed along with it. And what you should keep in mind is that the proposal engineers the site in terms of stormwater, but also provides parking for that entire development. So not only the first phase, which would be 5,218 square feet, but also the second phase, it's 2,660. There's a number of small things in terms of the site plan, and I've noted 11 items at the end of our report, and staff has done them too. But in terms of kind of larger picture things that we feel like it would be beneficial for the Planning Commission to give input on is number one, if you look under my report under natural features, you'll see that there's a proposal to remove 14 trees on site, and there's a lot of topography. And if you've gone to the site, landscaping and a berm kind of ring the site that's adjacent to two-family residential. And due to the stormwater design, a lot of that, preserving that landscape and preserving that topography isn't feasible. But there are two site plan standards for review that we wanted to bring to your attention. Number one is preservation of significant features, and it states that judicious effort shall be made to preserve the integrity of the land, existing topography, and natural features, in particular woodlands, MDQ designed regulated wetlands, and to a lesser extent, wetlands that are not regulated by MDQ. But it also says that the landscape shall be preserved in its natural state insofar as practical by removing only those areas of vegetation or making those alterations to topography which are reasonably necessary to develop the site in accordance with the requirements of the ordinance. Landscaping shall be preserved and or provided to ensure the proposed uses will be adequately buffered from one direction, from one another, and from surrounding public and private property. And I want to note that those are standards for site plan approval. And we don't often bring those up. We only bring those up when we feel like you really need to look at those and whether you're making a decision in terms of yes or no on those. But a lot of what's driving this is that stormwater design. And I would like, later on, I think OHM is going to say a little bit more about that and what options are available. And I know that the applicant has also submitted a proposed request along those lines. Also, what we wanted to bring to your attention is the parking. So they're proposing a 32 space parking lot. And staff did an excellent job for you in their review of really saying, what's proposed, what the standards are, and then also per the applicant, what they've said the use and how their operation generates parking will be. And our real concern is if out of the 32 parking space parking lot, the initial tenant is going to use 28 spaces, that only leaves 4 spaces additionally. And that simply won't support the proposed 2,000 plus square foot addition. And so the city engineer in their review suggested land banking some of those spaces. And one of the ideas that occurred to me today was maybe that it might be better to suggest that we land bank not only the additional parking spaces, but also the additional areas where it's proposed for future development. And then when those come together, you can determine the square footage and the parking together so that they match. But as staff pointed out, there's no on-street parking in this area. There's no municipal parking, so there's nowhere extra for the cars to go. And then technically, the way that this is set up, by asking for those 28 spaces now, which is more than the minimum required, they're asking you actually for a maximum waiver. So input tonight to the applicant about whether you would give that maximum waiver and how the parking should function in relationship to what their use is and their uses that was go into the building and then future uses would be helpful. Also, another thing, as I mentioned, is landscaping. And most of the existing landscaping is proposed to be removed. One of the questions we've asked for you to look at tonight and give input to the applicant is if the stormwater design could be changed, and that they did give a proposal that I think was included in a supplementary packet to you. Would you be willing to give waivers in order to preserve the berming and the vegetation that's there that currently provides buffering to those 2 family uses? And the final thing that we wanted you to just think about and give some input to the applicant to, and again, this is a preliminary review, and so they would later come back for final, is whether the elevations of the architecture that's proposed really meets the standards for architectural buildings that are laid out in the Dexter Ann Arbor Road Corridor overlay. I wanted to point out just one specific section says building entrances shall utilize windows, canopies, awnings, and provide a unity of scale and texture and color and sense of place. And the design does use those, but that door, because it's in the recess and where it is, it seems to blend in, and it doesn't use the same color, and it uses the same color palette as everything else. And so again, that doesn't seem to give a sense of place. And also maybe that the awnings also would be an opportunity for a brighter color. But again, those are our recommendations or suggestions. is up to you to really articulate to the, that is actually your decision as to whether those meet those standards or not. So just to refresh, we would really appreciate and recommend that you, the Planning Commission, give input to the applicant about the following items. Whether the proposed design meets the site plan approvals for preservation of natural features and landscaping, whether the applicant has a need for additional parking over the maximum 21 spaces for the initial building. 32 spaces have been requested. Whether a landscaping waiver for required buffers would be considered if more vegetation was preserved, and whether the proposed architecture is in compliance with the architectural standards of the Ann Arbor Dexter Road Corridor Overlay District. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know also Marcus from OHM has his report as well.
Okay, thank you, Megan, and excuse me, she will be available for questions, like you said, after. So with that, maybe Marcus, you could give us your rundown on the engineering aspects.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I have our review in the packet as well, and a number of what I would consider relatively minor housekeeping items that we asked the applicant to consider. And I do know they've submitted a response. I think most of them are easily solved. There's two that I guess I would like to comment on tonight. The first Megan talked about is the stormwater detention sizing, the impact that the size of the basin has on the existing natural features and existing vegetative buffers. The configuration that this project has, it currently all pretty much sheet drains to the east, the southeast and east through the condominium, just overland flow, and it gets picked up by some yard basins on the neighboring property. They're proposing to mimic that existing drainage pattern and connect to that existing system with a storm pipe. In order to do that, they will need an easement from the condominium association, and I understand the applicant is, and I could probably give you some more specifics, but they've already initiated those discussions. The difficulty here is to allow the stormwater detention to be anything short of restricting and a controlled release to the pre-development rate is problematic because the receiving system wasn't designed anticipating any increase in flow. I do know there's been other projects in the past that there's consideration has been given. To my knowledge, those projects all had a much closer proximity to the eventual receiving water, whether it was Mill Creek or county facility, which gave you some more flexibility because you didn't have to you didn't have the considerations of that downstream existing system. So in this particular case, we understand that the larger stormwater facility, there's some trade-offs there and what the impact that does have on the existing vegetation. But we wouldn't recommend allowing a smaller design storm. Now, that said, we do believe that there may be some other alternatives to do a mix of maybe a smaller pond with some underground detention, some piping either under the parking lot or in the other greenbelt areas between the parking lot and the pond, which I think we may be able to, there may be a way to protect some of the berming and landscaping with a combined, and they're already proposing, bioretention and other things. So they're moving in the right direction with that. But I guess I would just suggest the applicant take a closer look at what type of innovative design they could incorporate to both maintain the existing site features that are desirable and also meet the 100-year storm event. The one other item, engineering item that I think affects site layout potentially is the location of the drive approach. The initial proposal that was submitted, the applicant was following the ordinance and shifted the access drive so that it was contained fully within the property line extended, which is what the ordinance requires unless there's a good engineering reason not to do so. We had it in our letter that we think this is one of those cases because the property to the south already has established access off Huron View Court and not off Ann Arbor, Dexter Ann Arbor Road. That's one reason that would potentially justify an encroachment there. And they indicated in their response letter that they were open to straightening out that entrance geometry so that you don't have a reverse curve when you are pulling in and having vehicles potentially crossing center. So I think that's easily solved, I believe, as well. And we'll work with them on the specifics of how much of an encroachment is enough to correct the geometry, but also minimize, the impact of the neighboring parcel. Water and sewer are simple. They've already worked through that. Site had existing water and sewer. They recognize that they're going to have new connection for that, and there's a hydrant relocation to get proper fire coverage. So other engineering issues are pretty easy to solve. So I think the big one, as it relates to site layout, the drive has a small impact on that, but the solution for the stormwater detention is going to have the most significant impact on what the site layout looks like. And I can answer any questions on the other items if you have any.
Thank you, Marcus. We may have additional questions for you. I think at this time, I don't know if the petitioner or the applicant would like to add anything to the discussion. And then we can follow it up with planning commission discussion and a motion. So Michelle, who's our applicant? I mean, I know we have several applicants, but I guess we can raise a hand if anybody would like to add anything from the petitioner.
Miss Allison Bishop is representing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening. This is Allison Bishop from A.R. Brower. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to present the project for Radica and Anu. We reviewed the letters. I don't know, can I share my screen or no?
Hang on.
Can she? Yeah. I think Mike has to do something.
Okay, you should be able to share it now.
Sometimes it's just easier to pull up the plan, kind of go through it. But, oops, excuse me. In front of you is our Care to Cure preliminary site plan. You'll see that we are proposing a approximately 5,200 square foot building with approximately 2,200 square foot future building expansion and 32 parking spaces. Along with we've shaded this area now in response to some of the feedback that maybe we could consider land banking these spaces. Here's our dumpster pad. The current site was recently, there was about 1,000 square foot building demolished. That was the former Jazzercise for those of you who have been around a while. And then, sorry, I'm having trouble here. Here's more site layout. And here is our proposed detention and landscaping plan, which is part of the big part of the discussion. We met with the Huron View Commons Condominium Association last week and had some discussion about the easement that's necessary over here to connect to the storm outlet. We were hoping that possibly we could reduce the size of this basin and in the interest of saving some of the berming and vegetation that was discussed at the pre-application meeting as being important. We as everyone knows, we will be required to meet the city's current landscaping ordinance, which is pretty significant with regards to replacing trees and adding a significant buffer on both the on all sides of the property. Regarding the architecture, I do have the architect on the call as well, but Radhika and Anu, we went through a couple different iterations of this, and they're happy with the way that things have turned out. They're looking forward to expanding their business in Dexter. I guess to kind of head into a little bit of the parking, I think that I had a conversation with Michael this afternoon about the staff report, and I think that there was misunderstanding a little bit about the parking. Radhika and Anu believe that they would like to have 28 spaces today, and that is to plan for their business, but they don't believe that there's any more than 32 spaces needed for now and into the future. And as required and proposed, that's what the ordinance, I guess, requires. And we would like to pursue. What we would also, in our response letter, one of the things that we did include was that we would like to, in response to the comments, is land banking for spaces in the interest of, I guess, trying to address the comments. We could land bank these 4 spaces and build those as part of the future expansion if and when that comes to be. So all of the comments are generally, we can address them. I think the biggest ones for us were the parking and the stormwater. I think we're going to need to go back to the drawing board a little bit on some of the stormwater issues in an interest of trying to save some of the trees. But generally speaking, we have no problem meeting all of the comments, and look forward to, I guess, hearing your feedback.
Thank you. Was there anybody else from your team that wanted to speak now, or no?
We're the owners of the team, so my name is Radhika. So me and my husband Anu, we're the owners of Care to Cure Physical Therapy. So we're just really happy to be able to expand within the city limits. So we chose Dexter just because of the nature of the people and the welcomeness of the community. And I'm so happy that I've been able to grow so much that I do need a bigger space, and we're just looking forward to being able to build and expand in the city. So we look forward to your comments and excited to grow.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, I see a commissioner hand already up. So we do have a motion that could be made, and I don't know if that's why your hand was up already, Mr. Cardy, but so there was a motion that was requested of a postponement through staff. So but also there's information that we need to discuss as well. So with that, Mr. Cardy?
So I don't have a motion right now. It's more a comment. Allison, I want you to know that it was just our last meeting that I was taking an applicant to task for not being more like A.R. Brower. I was citing a project you guys did, the bowling alley project, and talking about how it took a building that was, not a value add to our community and made it a value add. And it should be, really the example of what we want developers coming into town to do. And I say that because I want to make it clear that I'm a big fan of a lot of the projects you guys have done. And in a lot of ways, I think you're our most sort of sensitive developer when it comes to what fits in our town and how it fits. And I say that despite the fact that, we go back and forth with Steve and tease him sometimes about his dislike of our landscaping ordinance and our need to have bike racks on projects. But what I wanted to talk to you about was the Carlisle-Wortman report noting, and I'm going to read it, generally, we would not recommend review by the Planning Commission of a site plan with this level of inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and non-compliance. And, you know, Allison, I'm sorry to say it, but this is a pattern. Like, you guys bring staff a project that isn't fully baked and sort of put a lot of pressure on them to help you bake it along the way. And I know, given your former role, you appreciate that better than almost anyone else would. And so I just wanted to take a moment to ask you, and I've asked before, this is the second time, please work a little harder to not do this. Please work a little harder to bring us more of a baked project. You know, I look at this project, I think it's great. I think it's a good use of the site. It looks really good. I like the vision. I like keeping a Dexter business in Dexter and expanding. I'm in your corner. There's very little, you know, that I dislike here. And so,
if I may respond.
Sure.
I appreciate your feedback, and I thank you for your positive feedback. I think I do, in our defense, I do want to make a point that I believe that a lot of the comments that were made are final site plan comments. I think that the biggest issues that we have here, the feedback that we heard in the pre-application meeting was try to save the berm and the trees. And we can't do that with the current stormwater detention. So we were sort of in a position of having to pick a horse, and that horse was to meet the stormwater requirements, and then in hopes that we could come to the Planning Commission because of projects in the past where a reduction in the stormwater calculations have been approved. So I think that we were hopeful that we were going to be able to try to save some of those trees and save that berm, but I don't think we can. And then, you know, regarding the landscaping, yeah, we're missing some trees, but again, I think preliminary site plan, generally speaking, is supposed to be an approval of the building location, the parking lot location, the stormwater, just generally the layout. Yeah, there's some more details that are required as part of the city's requirements, but we needed to get that vetted before we can really dive into any final engineering. And so the way that the site topography is, there's really no other place for the building, the parking, or the detention.
I do hear you, Allison. And again, you know, I'm not looking to have a debate. I think it's more than that. And I think that, you know, we work with Megan all the time. I know you probably did too. For her to make a comment like that, it's more than that, you know, that should have been baked. It's not a big deal, you know, except that it's part of a pattern. And again, I like the project. I want to work through those things with you as a commissioner, but it's just a request, you know, if you could put a little more thought toward this and in the future work to bring us things that are more fully baked, I think that would really be appreciated.
May I ask for you for some specifics? Just, I guess, maybe Megan can give me some feedback.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down that path of, I appreciate your comments, Jim, but I don't want to sidetrack us.
And I would encourage you to talk to Megan.
Yeah, I would take that follow up and communicate comments maybe to Michelle or something, the proper way of what the follow up, but I don't think we necessarily should get into that right now. But the valid comments, Jim, and I understand that. So, and actually some of those comments may be saved from the next agenda item. But with that, so going back, do we have a motion or perhaps additional discussion? But I saw Commissioner Wise, your hand go up.
Yeah, I have a question for Megan. On the parking where they want the 28, so 21 spaces is the maximum that they can put in. And then they have to do a waiver to get the additional 7. Is that correct? to get to the 28?
You're muted, Megan. Go muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, I apologize. Yes, so they would need a modification from you allowing that extra parking. So the additional parking per the ordinance, per the zoning ordinance. And I just want to clarify, thank you to Allison for giving a little more insight into what that 28 was about. Our real concern is that the building at its full capacity has a parking lot that can deal with the full capacity of the uses that are there. And as it's engineered, it meets the zoning ordinance and it meets it for medical office, which is the highest one. However, if any of those uses are known to use more than what's required, then we don't have anywhere for folks to go. So that extra, it just without it, and if it was approved, seeming to be a promise that those are the only parking spaces and parking spaces there, and a promise that it's going to be a 2,666 addition is something that I don't think it's wise to do. So I think I hope I answered your question. It didn't complicate it too much.
Okay, Dustin, or do you need additional?
Yeah, I had one other thing for Marcus on the stormwater, because Marcus said you could do something about doing some piping underneath the parking spaces. Is that a significant cost? I don't know, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, pipes and structures cost more than a hole, right? Than just moving dirt. So it would be more expensive than just an open pond. How much more, I wouldn't know that. If they're able to do it, maintain it in the greenbelt area, you have other pipe options. You don't have to worry about it being loaded with pavement on top, and that can help save some costs too. So that would be something, I guess, that the applicant would have to, how much pipe it would take and where it would go would all factor into what the cost would be.
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. I see it looks like, I think the applicant's engineers raised their hands. Do you have something to add? Is it Andrew Walters, looks like?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, on the issue of the piping, so I had done some quick calculations. If we keep the detention to within the berm area, and by the way, that berm, the berm and the greenbelt takes up about 21% of the existing site. So, on a large site that might not be significant, but when you're talking about a 1 acre site, 21% is pretty significant of the overall site area. So taking the berm into consideration, the detention that would fit just inside with this layout, we could only provide about 35% of the required 100-year detention. So that means that 65% of that would have to be underground detention. Underground detention is significantly more expensive than obviously doing a conventional detention pond. Somewhere in the nature of about $12 a cubic foot. Yeah, I mean, a typical underground detention system costs, small one costs about 100,000. I mean, could be up as much as 200,000. So it's a significant cost.
Michelle, you have your hand up?
Okay, so it was brought up before how there have been different times when the standard for the 100-year floodplain has been modified. those have been very, excuse me, limited cases. And it's been cases where conditions have allowed it. So in other words, it could be, excuse me, excuse me, the soils were conducive. You may remember when the 3441 Broad Street was coming through, the Strawberry Alarm Clock. And it was determined that they wouldn't have to do a 100-year floodplain because the soils were so good in that area that the water percolated through and didn't back up. Excuse me. In Grandview Commons, it was also allowed to be a slight deviation, but that was also because the sheet flow went toward the park and into the creek. And so you had some natural recharge before it got to the actual creek. In this case, the only place for the water to go is toward an existing residential development. And the soils are not conducive for percolation. We have, to say we have tried would be an understatement. We've looked at this every single way, and Marcus and Patrick from OHM can back me up on this. I've really pushed them to look to see, is there any possible way the basin can be reduced in size? And the only way to do it is the ways that Marcus has explained. It's not something that we often that we're limited this way. In this particular case, it is.
Thank you. Commissioner Roberts, and then we probably should get a motion out here in the next question or two, and we can continue the discussion, but it would be nice to get the motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion, get that done, but I do have a question.
Thanks,
All right. All right. I move that we take Carlisle, God, I'm blanking, I'm so tired. Recommendation to postpone making a final decision on this until the next meeting.
I second.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion. Okay. Thank you. And with that, do you have some questions, Karen?
No, I'm mumbling Wortman myself. But what my question was is the planned retention plan, without being able to make use of the the system underneath the residential next door, is that adequate if there were no addition planned? In other words, would that handle what's supposed to be built? Is it up to that or no?
So you're asking if they weren't proposing as much impervious surface due to the addition, would the basin have to be as large?
Well, and if there weren't, yeah, I guess that would do it. But if that were pervious, if the addition itself too were pervious as opposed to impervious, would that be enough?
Well, if you're talking about not having the addition or just land banking it, because it's two separate things.
I was thinking no addition. Would that do it?
Thank you. Marcus, can you address that?
Yeah, I can. The system as it's designed was to accommodate the full build out of the site. So you wouldn't need to expand the pond in the future. It would be sized to accommodate the future expansion as well.
Now, I'm just thinking more, is there a way to reduce the size of it as planned? Oh, but it's only planned for the initial build out.
No. It's planned. The basin is sized for the
whole thing.
Whole phases, yes.
All right. If they said, okay, we're not going to build it, we'll decide right now we're only going to build the original plan. Is there enough room for a detention pond for a smaller structure? Is I guess my question.
Yes, it would be smaller. Exactly how much so I couldn't tell you. I don't know if they've done that calculation, but so really to answer your question, the way to reduce the size of the pond is to reduce the proposed impervious surface of the development.
Okay.
Or integrate other, green roof or some other amenity that, reduces the amount of water that is making it into the pond.
Okay.
That good? Karen? Okay, Commissioner Hill, see your hand up next, and then Commissioner Phillips, and then Marsh.
I'm curious about the soils a little bit. If soil boring's been taken, do you know that this is heavy clay, or whether or not there is a sand structure down there?
We did do soil borings and it's sandy clay.
Okay. Kind of like our house up the
Mhm.
way. I have a couple of unrelated questions, but in regards to the stormwater, I would think, tell me if I'm wrong, and I know cost is an issue, but if the whole parking lot, if the stormwater detention were underneath the whole entire parking lot and the open space area there, even the berm, because the berm can be put back into place, would that accommodate the 100-year storm or whatever it's designed to accommodate?
Yeah, but the larger the system, the larger the cost. So I think that all things considered, we'd make the basin as big as we can with entertaining some other methods too, but trying to keep those underground systems to a minimum just to help offset the cost. Because we're doing an underground system in Scioto Township right now, and it's over $200,000 for the underground system.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, but I guess the question is more, the berm could remain or could stay, and the trees could stay, and everybody could be happy if everything were underground. And again, fully understanding if that's the case, it's a big cost.
I think we can save the berm and we can save some trees and still do a combination of stormwater approaches.
Oh, okay. So you're going to come back with that idea in mind for your final site plan, I presume, or when you come back to us?
Yeah, most likely.
Okay. I noticed there's no plant list, but I presume that's final site plan also. Is that correct?
We'll provide that. Right now, once we received the comments, we started making the revisions. So we'll have that vetted for our next submission.
I noticed on the what I would call the west side of the building, but I know things are kind of skewed because of the angle of everything. But I mean by that, on the childcare side,
that's
there's 4 doors on that side. And I was curious to know what that's all about. And then I see in the rendering that there's actually a sidewalk that's at that location that heads to the back of the building. And I don't see that on the plan. Is that, so I'm just curious.
The sidewalk was requested by the pre-application meeting committee, as well as adding those doors, and those doors are egress exit doors.
Oh, okay. So that again will show up on the next site plan, that sidewalk I'm talking about, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the last thing I have a question about is by the trash receptacle, the place where you've got the trash containers there. There's a big wide stub, 17 feet or something like that. Is that for the trucks to turn around?
Yeah, the fire trucks and the garbage truck.
Yeah, the garbage truck's what I'm thinking of, but actually it would work for fire trucks better because, oh, I see. A garbage truck would get in there, pick it up, then head same direction into that turnaround, back around, get back out of there. Okay, I understand. That's my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Phillips, I think, Marsh, and then I saw Wise.
A couple quick things. I guess I particularly like the fact that the retail is closer to the road per ordinance, unlike some of the other projects recently. I think I'm a little mystified by all the concern about detention because the applicant's following our own requirements. And to say that, yeah, it would be nice if everything was underground and somebody paid for it, I think is a little perplexing. I mean, if we don't like our ordinance requirements, then we should change them instead of complaining to the applicant that they have to follow our requirements. And that they don't have an unlimited budget to do that. I don't think that's a surprise or any of that. I think the design is sad. It's uninspired, and it's more of the same stuff that we constantly approve, and is constantly disappointing that it's like CD level low end design with little thought. It's just throwing something up on a wall, and I think that's too bad, but it's probably going to get approved. I wish there was as much thought put in the design, or a fraction of the thought put in the design of the building as there was the stormwater system. I think the real question is, for my own curiosity, is why this close to the city that the applicant is unable to tie into the Dexter stormwater system and not have a pond at all, or have a pre-treatment pond, a small pre-treatment pond. I think that would be something that, as far as the CIP and other things, looking at extending our stormwater capacity out to these areas close to downtown, especially at the top of the hill here, would be a nice thing for our engineers to think about. I don't know if it's practical. Maybe it's too far, or there's other issues.
On that, Marcus, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe only private storm is available, both in the location proposed and even going uphill. But whether it's public or private, the issue is that it would be an uphill connection that would need to be made to go in the other direction.
Isn't Mill Creek below the elevation of the applicant? Or is it on the downslope? But that's what you're referring to. It's on the downslope. So I got you. It's over the top of the peak of the hill there. Okay, I think, where it's possible, I think it's great if businesses can tie into a public system and not have to rely on their own mini detention systems everywhere. I had one more point. I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, I know what it was. We got to get off the pervious paving routine. Pervious paving only works under very minimal conditions, and it basically requires a double stormwater system. The water doesn't just go through the pavers and sit on something or slide down a hill somewhere. There has to be a whole stormwater system underneath the paving to accommodate that. And then that paving has to be regularly vacuumed out. So it's a poor, in Michigan anyway, it's a poor solution to stormwater issues, in my opinion. And I think it works a lot better in like Arizona or California. But as far as Michigan goes, when the paving's frozen or in the winter, I think it's a terrible engineering solution, but that's my 2 cents on it. I wouldn't encourage the applicant to either put this detention underground or use pervious paving. I would say that I would applaud them for following the stormwater requirements that we asked them to follow. Thank you.
Okay, I think Commissioner Marsh was next, I believe, and then Commissioner Wise.
Yeah, I would just kind of echo Tom's sentiment. I mean, these are what we've requested, so we get what we've got here. I mean, is it possible to do less parking spots? I mean, you could always add those additional someday, and that would reduce the basin size now. And who knows, if we've got 120-foot right of way on Dexter and Arbor, maybe we'll do some on-street parking or something.
Sorry, Kyle, I can't hear you. Kyle, I can't hear you. Can you please restate what you just said?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, it's louder.
Yep.
Is that better? Oh, so I was going to say, I just echoing Tom's, a lot of what Tom said. Basically, I mean, it meets what we have requested, and so this is what we get. I mean, you could potentially ask them to reduce the number of parking spots. I mean, maybe they don't actually ever use all those. Very few parking lots are ever full anyway. And maybe that solves it. And then the other thing is, I noticed on the site plans that we've got Dexter and Arbor marked as a 120-foot right of way. So maybe by the time they want to do their expansion, we'll have some on-street parking for them to utilize.
I don't think on-street parking, I don't think there's been any discussion of that being a consideration. And as discussed a little further in the memo, as develops occurred in this section of the corridor, 120 feet or 120-foot right-of-way width might not necessarily be applicable, given that development on adjacent sites has more or less mirrored a 66-foot right-of-way. So that may be a topic, a separate topic that the planning commission will have to take up at a later date. But for context, most development has occurred not to that 120-foot right-of-way width.
Oh, good. Okay. So anyway, that's maybe my solution is maybe you don't need so much parking, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't need that big paved turnaround for the garbage truck or something, which would correspond to a reduction. I also liked Tom's idea. It's too bad this isn't tied into our municipal storm drain to eliminate this, to a large part.
If I
I
could,
do like that the parking's off to the side and the building's up front there. So I have to say thumbs up on that.
Yeah, Michelle,
then
did
the
you want to add
last-
something? Oh, sorry.
Right, one last thing is I like the idea of straightening out that approach instead of having that little kink to it. One thing that I noticed on that, I'm sure this is part of our engineering standards, but those radiuses are, maybe they're encouraging a little too fast of swooping in there with that sidewalk going right through. Anytime you swoop with a nice big radius, people in cars go swoop right in there. And the tighter you pinch that turning radius, the more you have to be deliberate and slow down to turn in and cross that sidewalk. So it's just a point to note.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Michelle, did you want to add anything to that, or should I go to? I know Commissioner
yeah,
Wise.
let me just clear something up real quick. The city does not have a regional public stormwater system. The only place where there's a regional system is in the industrial park. So there isn't a public storm system to tap into. In order to have that, you need to have a regional basin and all the storm network going there. We don't have that.
Yeah.
Can I ask, where's all the detention from downtown going then?
I don't know. I don't know directly where that's going, but I think I kind of want to refocus this back. I think we've got a little bit off track here. I think part of the issue I'm a little confused about regarding the stormwater is I don't think we're asking them to do anything. Part of the question is they're claiming they can't do what they want without removing part of the berm or the trees. They have to meet our code. That's what we're saying. And they can meet the code. I wouldn't support any kind of waiver of stormwater. There's just like every other site that we've approved for development, they have to meet our stormwater code. I'm not sure why we're debating this. The only question is, I think whether or not they can do some combination, and I know cost is relevant, but I'm listening to discussion. That's not we've never necessarily entered all that into our discussions before. I mean, the fact of the matter is our stormwater code would require this much stormwater. Would I support waiving less than that? Absolutely not. There's no reason why they can't get it on the site. It's either going to be a combination of an open basin or or pipes underground. I mean, they can do it just like everybody else that develops a site. So I'm not sure why we're having this prolonged discussion on them meeting our stormwater standards. To me, it's open and dry. You meet that and you figure out on your site how to meet those standards. So I just wanted to add that after listening to this, because I think that the key, they do have topography concerns, and it drains flow to that. And we did express at the commission meeting, or sorry, at the pre, about the importance of that berm and that vegetation. There's a way to meet our code and save the berm and the vegetation between a combination of the two. That's up to the petitioner to figure that out. I don't think that's on us to debate whether or not they need a regional system or not. We don't have one. They have to meet our code. So I'm sorry, I was just, I want to pull it back because I know it's getting a late hour and we have other items that we need feedback on. So I know I will kind of, and I have other additional items, but sorry, I just wanted to kind of summarize that up, but my thoughts on that at least. But I'll flip it over to Commissioner Wise right now because I know he's been very patient.
Well, I can piggyback off you because I've written down here the preservation of the natural trees and the berm, as many as possible. That's the ideal thing. Keeping as many existing trees, having the arborist come out and check the trees that they wanted to cut down. If they need to be cut down, different story, but have someone actually make that decision. That I'm not necessarily a proponent of having the 28 parking spaces, the 21 parking spaces, which is what we would require. If they were to add on the additional 11 that they want, okay. But for me, the 21, I'm okay with that. The architecture wise, I would love to see a little bit more color. You know, it just seems like it's going to be brown and just a little color. And I'm all for having, you know, this business coming to town. I think it's fantastic. I'm truly excited for it, you know, so I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Cardy.
Well, Matt, I want to thank you first of all, because my main question was going to be, are we being asked to do something that we don't have the discretion to do, which is essentially waive the stormwater requirements? And I thought what you said was the case, and it clearly is the case. I don't know what input we could give on the stormwater beyond the fact that you got to find a way to meet the requirements, and you know, and we can't tell you how to do that. I feel really bad that, you know, we have criticized the design of this project. I mean, I just don't see that as our role. If it's within the, you know, rules and requirements of the town, design is very subjective, and to demonstrate that, I think it's a fine looking building, and I don't think Steve Brower's built a bad looking building in this town. Regarding the parking spaces, gosh, parking is just our continual issue. I mean, mostly people are coming in here demanding that they have fewer parking spots. Now we have somebody who wants more parking spots, and we're fighting that. I'm fine with the parking spots. It's their property, it's their development. If they can work it out with this many parking spots and they can meet the drainage requirements, I'm fine with that. I mean, normally we're facing the exact opposite. People don't want to have enough parking spots. And so I don't have an issue with it. I think we need some sort of site inventory on the trees to know exactly what we're dealing with. We don't have that right now. It's part of what I mean when I say this isn't fully baked. You know, again, I think this is a good project. I think it's good for this site. I think it's good for the town. I don't have an issue with the parking, but the stormwater is not negotiable. We have requirements, and you got to figure out how to meet them. So that's what I say.
Thank you. I noticed that the applicant did have their hands up. If you had, would you like to add something to the discussion?
I just wanted to say I appreciate all the comments that you all have. We are a small business. We are just starting to grow, and we do expect to continue to grow. So we do still have a small budget to work with. So do keep that in mind. And we are also being financed by Small Business Administration to expand. So anything that we tend to consider, it's away at our expansion or our business growth prospects, including hiring new people. So with that in mind, if there is any opportunity to reduce the detention pond and still save those trees, we are more than happy to work around that. And we appreciate kind of going through and giving a deeper thought to that. So that's where we are. I mean.
Thank you. Okay. So wrapping up, so additional plan commission. So we've had a lot of discussion about some items. There's some feedback that we could give off to the petitioner again with regarding, I mean, I think we've heard some, I'm looking off of actually it looks like page 183 within the packet. Under the recommendations, they wanted some feedback. Preservation of natural features in the landscaping. I mean, we've heard some of that regarding the preservation of the berm, I think. That was one item that we wanted to have some feedback on that I think in general, we've heard some support for that preservation. I think the applicants indicated that they're going to try to preserve that as well. The applicant, the parking space. So I'm sorry, Michelle, on the parking space, they wouldn't necessarily they don't need a waiver. We're just kind of asking whether or not.
I think, if I can, Matt, I think that's a bit of the question. So in the application narrative, the applicant explains that they are going to need 28 spaces after hiring additional staff and for the additional patients that would come with that additional staff after the first year. So with the ordinance requirements, it establishes the number of spaces that need to be provided per square foot, and then the planning commission has to determine whether any increase or decrease could be permitted depending on what the needs are for the use under consideration. The other related requirement is that for sites with multiple uses, the required number of spaces for each use has to be considered separately. So in this narrative, if the applicant, if there's a need for 28 spaces, then for the phase one, so to call it, space, the default would still be that the required spaces for that 60 square foot space need to be provided according to the requirements for that use, which given the permitted uses in the district would be either 11 spaces or 8 spaces. However, with only 32 spaces proposed, what's essentially happening is that if that allowance for 28 spaces for the phase one space were approved, it inherently it permits a decrease in the spaces allowed for the phase two space, because they're only proposing 32 total and there are only 4 remaining spaces after that 28. So what would be needed is either some clarification from the applicant about their parking needs, or direction from the planning commission about whether the commission's comfortable only leaving 4 remaining spaces for that phase 2 space. And as discussed in the review letters, both staff and consultants have some concern about that.
Okay. That kind of summarizes up a little bit. I mean, we've heard some feedback on the parking. I'm traditionally a less parking person, but I know there's not a lot of street parking available here, a lot of the other options. So I want to go through some of these other ones really quick. I see Allison Bishop has her hand up. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I tried to explain this earlier, that I think that there's a misunderstanding about Anu and Radhika think that 32 spaces for them is more than enough for the expansion, which conforms to the ordinance and is exactly what they're proposing. I think the question that we would like answered based on our response to the comments is, is land banking 4 appropriate, or can we just build all 32 now? But we're suggesting that if you want us to land banking 4 would be fine, according to the applicant.
Okay, I think that does help. And I think if I understand correct, thank you, Allison. I think if I understand correctly too, I think staff is, and the consultants are expressing some, if those use change, like if that additional use, correct, that changes in that building, there may not be that parking that's provided, or that the parking that's available because there's no other room for that. So, okay, so I don't want to over discuss that too much. I mean, personally, I would support banking those 4 spaces if the development that's associated with that is banked. But again, that's just my opinion. The architectural standards, we've had some feedback on that, in both directions. Are there additional thoughts on how that we do have standards in the Ann Arbor Road corridor? So we do have some standards to which to hold the building to. So it's not just necessarily arbitrary, but again, I think we did hear some comments either way. I don't know that gives that applicant a lot of direction. I mean, I like the changes in the building, I think, for my part, although it is kind of a generic looking building. And I definitely agree where that front is not delineated very well. It doesn't seem to really have a front entrance. It's kind of buried amongst there. If there would be something to do to kind of fit, and with that flat roof with the other thing, I'm not sure that again fits into that streetscape, but I'm not an architect. So those are points that I know you can hear in both directions on that. The last things that I want to get through staff is also asking about a waiver for the loading area. I don't know if anybody has a strong opinion on that. That's again, something I think we can get to. If anybody has a strong opinion, let us know now. But if not, I think that's something we can discuss further at the next time, as well as shifting the driveway to the south. I think that does make sense given the engineer's recommendation. Again, there's no other curb cut that's likely to that southern parcel. That seems to make sense there.
Kyle has his hand up, Matt.
So yeah, I was just gonna say, now I see some additional, Kyle's hand back up. So, and we do want, if there's anything else additional, I mean, given we're getting late at the hour, we do have we want to give constructive feedback to the applicant. But if anybody else would kind of brief up our comments a little bit to get them out there as much as we can say to this applicant now. So I'll flip it back over to Kyle.
I had only one architectural one. I think you hit on the point about the front, but that there is a pitched roof on the square section, right? The tower or whatever that is. But it is pretty low pitched. In other words, they're showing some like bird's eye renderings, but I don't think that, I mean, if a pitched roof is what they're going for, that you're never really going to see that one from very many angles. So might look nice to pitch that up a little bit.
Additional.
Yeah, maybe a little more pitch. You can go up to a 6 without the price going way up.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Additional from planning commissioners. Again, obviously this will be back. I'm trying to look to see if there's additional. I mean, I think overall, just like others, I'm excited about their use. We want to help the applicant expand in the city. We're great that they're staying in here. I think it's a good use for the parcel, I believe. So I do think we just got to get to some of these finalize up these items with hopefully a little bit more planning commission input either at the next meeting, or if we don't have anybody else right now, I think we'll call the vote right now and try to move on. So if there's additional planning commissioner feedback right now, please, anything on the plan that have some implications for design.
Matt, Allison has her hand up.
Oh, I didn't know if that was still up or if she just raised it.
No,
okay.
she raised it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, it's not a big deal. I was just going to say, we included in our response letter that they don't expect to get deliveries by anything other than a UPS or a FedEx.
Okay.
So
yeah, thank you. So that goes to the loading zone comment. Okay, so thank you. That's yeah, it's kind of what we expected. So
so Matt,
that's great.
I think it's important to ask Allison and the applicant if they feel they have the direction that's needed on the determinations.
Do you guys have direction that's needed, Allison?
I think I have clear direction on the stormwater. I think that unless I hear a strong objection, we'll continue to proceed with proposing to land bank 4 spaces. And then other than that, I think we're good. Everything else is dotting i's and crossing t's.
Okay, all right. I mean, yes, and you did, unless there's any tweaks to the architectural based on comments that you heard. Again, there were some comments, there weren't a lot, but there were some comments to look at that and the design standards for the Ann Arbor Road, especially that entrance. Though I think that could really make the building pop too. It's not, it add a little bit of accent features. Okay. All right. Any other planning commissioner items on here? For sharing, I think I covered briefly. All of it. Okay, no other delay. Let's have the vote. So the vote, again, there was a motion to postpone it to the next meeting. So with that, Ms. Carol Jones, could you call the vote, please?
Okay, Cardy,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Marsh,
Yes.
Heatley,
I have to unmute her.
Her hand's up, but yeah. There you go.
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes. Okay. Meeting is, or issue is postponed. Okay. Next on the agenda. I think it follows nicely. Sorry, item B now under the new business. This is something that I had discussed with Michelle earlier, and I think it's relevant given some of the comments that we've heard tonight. And I've heard some from some planning commissioners in the past, again, with some of this frustration about scheduling of plans before. Again, it's happened in the past where we get some things where they're just not ready, and we end up either postponing them or maybe approval with a long list of contingencies. Now, and in discussion, I was not proposing that we necessarily need every single item addressed before it's scheduled, because I understand that there's a lot of times, I mean, there could be 5 items on there, but they may be dotting i's and crossing t's and things that are contingent upon. But again, what some of my concern was is that, again, kind of a project like this, and if staff, I know there's a policy in the past, and it was a long-standing kind of policy between city council, I think, and it went to planning commission for many years to try and get things scheduled. They apply, they submit a plan, we put them on an agenda. But again, so I really want some planning commission discussion, and if we give some support to staff to say, look, we don't want to see some of these proposals until we've got, it's in substantial compliance with the code, so that we don't, because I don't think it's fair to the applicant or staff or us as commissioners to kind of chew through so many issues and not necessarily just picking on this project. Again, there's been other ones, or I'm not picking on the developer, the applicant. There's been other proposals. So I think, as I said, kind of just to let staff know, and I believe through Council Member Hubbard as well, that could be translated up to planning or to council. I would ask that, our discussion here about whether or not this goes forward. And again, based on your feedback here of what you guys all think about. So kind of the site plan scheduling and the amount of completeness and things like that. So again, okay, so I saw a couple hands go up. So first we will get to Commissioner Cardy and then Commissioner Roberts.
Matt, I'll just say that I think my previous comments summed it up. I don't think it's fair to staff. It's been happening with a greater frequency in the last 2 years. I do think A.R. Brower, as much as I like their projects, is the chief culprit. And I really hope they'll listen to what I said tonight and be a little more diligent with what they have done when they bring things to the Planning Commission and to staff. But I don't know how much control over it we have, because we don't schedule this stuff. I mean, I certainly would back staff in saying that something's not ready. I do think that's their call ultimately. And if it matters, yeah, I certainly will back up staff saying something's not ready. I trust them. They're great. So I also don't think it's good for the applicant in the long run.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Roberts and then Commissioner Phillips.
Well, I agree with Jim, and I'll be honest, I was kind of angry as I read this because I felt like there was a long list of stuff that wasn't done. I've had to rely entirely on our consultants to tell me what was important and what wasn't important. And after a while, I just sort of gave up and said, well, let's just see what happens. I mean, an applicant should do their damnedest to get it right and then submit it. That's how I feel about it. And I don't know how we, manage that, but I just think it's sort of unfair. It feels like gotcha applicants to me. Well, we'll put this in and maybe they'll miss this or something like that. That's how it seemed to me. And I kind of resented it. So I know my feelings don't matter and feeling is not part of this, but that was my view.
And again, I thank you. And I'm not, it wasn't in response to just this project again. So I'm not trying to pick on just this project, but again, Commissioner Phillips.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes especially to combined site plan, preliminary and final, which this wasn't, but I think those should be really rare. And I absolutely agree. Most communities that I propose in, that site plan better be really far along before it goes before the planning commission. And I've even seen some communities that they treat the first meeting, no matter what it is, as basically a pre-meeting. They have like a preliminary before the planning commission to do an initial review of the project before they'll even look at it. And I think that's one of the reasons is again, I'm not even talking about this project, but it is more common. There's this kind of view out there that the planning commission is an obstruction to progress, and it's something we got to get past. So that there's a lot of wasted time, and by either combining things or rushing something through, some kind of what Karen's saying too. Somebody's gonna quote save some time unquote, and I don't think I agree with what's said, that I don't think it's fair to us or to the staff, and in worst case it's a waste of our time, because all we're doing is just throwing out feedback and suggesting how they can complete their documents. And I think that's not what the planning commission's for. That's what staff is supposed to be in the position to review, and the consultants to review something and say when it's ready. And then we're supposed to review the results of that. We're not supposed to be helping the applicant complete their project. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Additional, and like I said, really just kind of, it has been, I mean, on the 20 years or so I've been on the planning commission, it has been kind of that policy, but I think, again, I wanted to hear some feedback from planning commission to give staff that direction, that either, like I said, you have planning commission direction to say, hold off these until they're substantially complete. There can be issues that remain. And I get it that the applicant needs feedback from us on a lot of cases. But I think, there's certain things that, anyway, that's how I'll say. So additional planning commission feedback. Yay, yes, no. Okay, Commissioner Wise.
So being a previous zoning administrator, I guess one of the things I like to look at was having as few additional comments from the staff. Is there any way where we can have something set up from staff where if there's something that comes in as like 6 or 7 or 8 criteria that need to be met, that we just say, we're not going to do it. We're not going to look at it until after, you know what I mean? I mean, I just think that would be easier. But
so if I could, Matt and Justin, if I could start with that.
Please.
So if there are 10, 11 minor little items that you can make a condition of approval on, staff doesn't have an issue with that. What's hard for staff to do is when there's inconsistencies, inaccuracies, or discrepancies on the site plan or between the site plan and a written description of what's going on, then staff's in a position of trying to having to make assumptions. That's a slope that we don't want to go down. And Dustin, as a former zoning administrator, I know you understand that. I know Megan gets that. I know all of you understand that. We can't make those assumptions. That's what makes it difficult sometimes. And again, not just this project. There have been there have been others in the last year or two. It just seems to be that same thing where we can't make those determinations in order to give you guidance. So I truly appreciate the feedback and the support.
And
Yes. Megan, yes, please.
and there were two things that I would chime in on. It's not the laundry list of details. I often feel, and when there's inconsistencies and discrepancies, as your consultant, sometimes I feel that it's unfair to you for me to bring it. I have to, it's my job to look at them. It's my job to look at site plans. But I feel like you should be able to open a site plan and the basic material, what the setbacks are, what modifications they're looking for, what's in each phase, those should be laid out and clear. So then you have the time and the space and the bandwidth to talk about the things that you need to give, that decisions and findings that you need to make. And when modifications aren't clear, when details are not clear, and when phasing is not clear, it is very difficult for us to set the stage for you to have good discussions and therefore make good decisions.
Yeah, that's great. Again, Megan, right? I completely agree. And I think that that's where, as a commission, we can say you can slow that down a little bit because it helps you guys and it helps the applicant, it helps planning commission, the public to know what we're. So yes, I couldn't agree more. So I think as a planning commissioner, I would give you the full support to take the time to get those things addressed before it brings back. Commissioner Wise, I thought I saw a hand up.
I think we're done.
You have, okay, maybe not. All right. Any other feedback on this item? So Michelle, did you, again, I don't want this to be the issue necessarily for me, although we had other commissioners, but I think in general, it seems kind of supportive, I think, from what I've heard, and I see any heads nodding.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay, thank you. All right, so that's it on that one. So finally, moving right to proposed business for next meeting. Yeah, so we've got a couple. The public hearing for the ADUs, the zoning ordinance subcommittee review, and it looks like we'll probably have this Care to Cure site plan back, hopefully with some revisions. And I don't know if there's anything else in the horizon, Michelle, or does that cover it, kind of those three items for now?
That covers it unless something else comes up, but that's what it is for right now.
All right, perfect. So with that, item 12. Any citizens wishing to address the commission, please raise your hand. State your name and address for the record. And
Not seeing any hands, Matt.
I don't see any hands raised. Okay, seeing none. Last item, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Thank you. See, Commissioner Wise, your support.
I'll support it.
Okay, support Roberts. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all
Great
very much. Have a
conversation.
really nice evening.
Thank you.
everybody.
Yes.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.